Honestly, this might be the most painful video I've ever made, and I'm not even exaggerating at that. Hello everyone, my name is Caitlin and welcome back to my channel. So today we are covering the highly requested Zane and Rikki from H2O Just Add Water. And when I first went into this video, I thought that it would be super easy. I was like, it'll probably only be about an hour long, there's only 3 seasons, how much will I really have to talk about? But turns out a lot. This video ended up being much longer than I anticipated, but that just means that you guys are in for a good one. Now this ship is one that I personally have loved ever since I watched the show for the first time. I have such positive memories of me and my sister Carrie watching it on Netflix growing up, but it really wasn't until only a few years ago that I actually sat down and watched the show properly. And in doing so, I just absolutely fell in love with Zane and Rikki. They are just such a good enemies to lovers, class difference, interspecies, forbidden love story ship. Their story just truly has so much going for it, and I cannot wait to dive into it all. But unfortunately, along with the good comes the bad. Now, I do think that it is pretty well known that the last season of the series isn't exactly the best. It was made a little bit after the second season, and apparently it wasn't even planned. It only came after they saw the demand for the series to continue. And I'll be the first to admit that when I watched the show properly, I couldn't even get through the third season because it was just so awful. And so when making this video, this was also the first time that I ever actually finished the series. And so thank you guys for making me do that, but also not, because I did kind of have a miserable time in doing so. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The Zane and Rikki that I know are perfect and can do no wrong, and so I'm really excited to get into them. Before that though, I do feel like I have to set the scene a little bit, just in case there are some people out there that are like, what on earth is this mermaid show? I have no idea what you're talking about. So we have our 3 main girls, Emma, Cleo, and Rikki. They're not friends at first, but quickly become close after all becoming mermaids together. They also all go to school together along with Cleo's best friend, Lewis, and he ends up helping them with their mermaid secret and abilities. There's also Zane, who is like our school bully, particularly towards Cleo, and his posse includes his best friend Nate, as well as his distraction, which is Miriam. Now we haven't gotten there yet because we are just starting our timeline, but there's this specific episode in season 2 about ambergris. Zane basically finds it online, and it's this scent that has this sort of hypnotic effect over mermaids. Now while today's sponsor, Scentbird, doesn't seem to have any scents that can magically control mythical creatures, at least as far as I'm aware, they do offer over 900 fragrances, including popular brands like Prada and Versace, as well as niche labels such as Parfums de Marly and Roja. If you're not familiar, Scentbird is a monthly subscription service that allows you to test scents out before committing to them. Your fragrances arrive in small portable atomizers like these, making them easy to carry in your bag or travel with. My personal favorites this month are Victoria's Secret's Teas, and that's in this one, but then I also love the Giassata Ambassadora, which is in this one. They're both really vanilla heavy, and I am a sucker for a good vanilla scent. But what's also great about Scentbird is that it's affordable and flexible. You can change your fragrance out every month without having to commit to the costly price of a full-size bottle, which can range anywhere from $300 to $600. This way you can find your signature scent without having to break the bank. So if you want to try out Scentbird, you can scan that QR code or use promo code Caitlin for 55% off your first month at Scentbird. You can get your first fragrance for just $8, and then in the next month it will only be $16.95. Thank you so much to Scentbird for sponsoring this video, and with all that being said, let's move on to chapter 1. So we begin with Rikki stealing Zane's spark plug from his boat, causing it not to work. Zane then tricks Cleo into getting into it, and then he pushes her out into the water. Luckily though, Rikki comes to her rescue, jumping onto the boat and revealing that she's the one who stole the spark plug. And she says that she did it because Zane is a pig and she would do anything to get under his skin. She then drives the boat back around the dock, spraying Zane with water. The two then steal the boat, sort of, as he does tell her to keep it after he sets her off floating, but they quickly pick up Emma and head off to Mako Island. This is where they discover a cave with a little water pool inside of it. They then jump into it to escape, and then the water, along with the light from the moon, transforms them into mermaids. So now they are blessed or cursed, depending on how you look at it, and now every time they come into contact with water, they have about 10 seconds before they sprout a tail. They also all get mermaid powers associated with water, so Rikki is able to boil it, Emma can freeze it, and Cleo can manipulate it. Anyways, they then get picked up by the water police, who later alerts Zane's dad of what happened with his boat. And then this leads to Zane threatening Cleo. The bullying continues in the second episode when Zane and his friends throw Cleo in the pool, and then in episode 4 when he delivers to the girls what he says are 3 frozen colas. tequilas. Rikki is suspicious of his motives, but Zane argues that they looked thirsty and tells them to enjoy. Cleo takes a sip and coughs, and then Emma asks if it's prune juice, to which she nods. And then we overhear Zane laughing in the background. Rikki then fake laughs back at him, sarcastically calling him real mature. And then the invitations for Emma's party goes out. Zane is of course not invited, but he does decide to crash it anyways with Miriam. At the party, Emma's mom is happy to see him as they are family friends, but Rikki still tells Emma to say the word and that she'll kick him out. Later, Rikki notes to Emma that Zane is up to something and she agrees. This leads Emma to pulling him aside and telling Zane to forget about whatever he's trying to pull here. He argues that he's just here with Miriam, and this leads her to ask what his girlfriend thinks about him flirting with everybody else. He clarifies that Miriam is not his girlfriend, she's just someone he lets follow him around. And then Rikki interrupts and she offers Zane the pastries that he brought. He hesitates, saying that he shouldn't, as they're for her and her guests, but Emma continues to encourage him, and then he takes a bite, leaving both of the girls shocked. He then teases them, asking if they thought that he would be so immature to put prunes in them or something. But nonetheless, Emma still goes on to kick him out. While doing so though, she then gets called to something else and leaves Rikki to do the final kicking. And so yeah, I actually have no idea what Zane's angle was at this party, and we may never know. We then jump forward to episode 10, where we have a short film contest. We also find out that Zane's father is one of the judges and he has doubled the prize money. This causes Rikki to sarcastically say that she wonders who's going to win. Zane retorts that if she's implying that she's an automatic loser, then he seconds that. And then we get a bit of a backstory on Zane's dad. So the theme of this short film contest is hero, and Cleo points out that Zane's dad is one. Apparently, when he was younger, he rode a windsurfer to Mako Island and back, and he set a record time in doing this that has yet to be beaten. How that makes him a hero, I'm not exactly too sure, but it's an important part of the episode nonetheless. Rikki then tells Zane that she had no idea that his dad was such a hero, adding that he must have been a tremendous disappointment to him. Zane does not reply to this though, probably because she did hit a bit of a soft spot. Moving on, Zane then gathers a whole bunch of articles and old photos of his dad's stunt to show him. He shares with him that he tracked everything down in the library and that it took hours. But then all his dad cares about is going on about how amazing his stunt was to complete. So now it's pretty clear to see that Zane has some daddy issues, which has clearly led to his poor treatment of others. Harrison then goes on to gloat about no man ever being able to beat his record, but says that he would kiss the feet of any man who could pull off what he did then. And then obviously Zane, who we now know is starved from attention from his dad, decides to take him up on this. So he goes to Lewis and convinces him to film him on his dad's original windsurfer, completing the same stunt. We then get to the stunt where Lewis's boat breaks down, leaving Zane alone near Mako Island, which is also apparently a breeding ground for sharks nowadays. His board then gets hit by a shark and he flies into the water. Now being circled, Zane calls for help from Lewis and he is able to get his boat up and running again, but he is still a bit of a ways from where Zane is. Meanwhile, Rikki is nearby as she's been filming sharks for her own short film. So she overhears his cries as well and rushes to his rescue. She is then able to use her mermaid powers to create a circle of boiling water around Zane, saving him from the sharks. Rikki swims off before Zane can notice her, and then Lewis comes to his rescue. He tells him that there were sharks everywhere and that he thought he was a goner, but then Lewis notes that he doesn't see anything. We later see Lewis reviewing the footage, and then Harrison comes in and is not happy with what was shot. Zane argues that there were lots of sharks out there, heaps of them, but since Lewis didn't see anything, Harrison assumes that Zane made everything up. He then tells Lewis to destroy the footage, but he refuses as it's his disc. Moving on to the festival, Lewis does show the footage of Zane crying for help, but then he clips it to make a joke out of it, showing him screaming in fear from a goldfish. Everyone laughs, and then Rikki turns to Lewis asking if he thinks this is funny. Lewis argues that the audience is the best judge, but then that's when Rikki reveals to him that she was there. She then asks him who he thinks scared the sharks away and reveals that Zane wasn't acting. And I really like this. I think that it's really big of Rikki that she's able to put what Zane's done in the past aside and stand up for him like this. It's very admirable of her in my opinion. Lewis then wins the competition, causing Rikki to walk out. Zane also wins for Best Actor, and he decides to donate the prize money to the juice bar. We then end the episode with our first real scene between the couple. So we see Zane admiring his trophy when Rikki approaches. She tells him that he was good, and he asks if she means with acting. She says no and explains that she means the whole thing about him windsurfing around Mako. And she tells him that that took guts. He smiles at her before telling her that she's the only one who thinks so. And then instead of replying to this, Rikki just walks off. Now, I really like this scene, and not just because it is the very first one that we've gotten between the couple, but also because this is exactly what Zane was after throughout the entirety of this episode. He desperately just wanted his dad's approval, and time again he failed in receiving it. But then Rikki ends up being the one that gives it to him. And it's just such a great moment. I absolutely love how it was shot. Having the location be at the docks and at nighttime, it just created such a good atmosphere for them to have their first moment together. This then brings us to episode 13, in which Zane has another near-death experience, but this time it's Emma who saves him. So because it's not Rikki, we don't really need to go as in detail on this one, but basically Zane almost drowns in a shipwreck and Emma saves him. And during this, he does catch a glimpse of her tail. And so this basically marks the start of Zane the mermaid hunter. So in the following episode, he begins his search. He at first goes to his friend Nate for help, but he's quick to realize that Nate is an idiot, and so then this brings him to Lewis. He offers him a job in helping him search for the sea monster that he saw, even going as far as showing him a drawing that he's done up of it, which clearly looks like a mermaid's tail. After seeing the drawing, Lewis backs out, knowing that Zane is onto them, and then this leads him to go to the girls and show them the drawing. Rikki jokes that this is a valuable lesson and that next time Zane is drowning, they won't save him. And then Lewis explains that he offered him a job in helping him track down this sea monster. Surprisingly though, Rikki then tells him that he should take it. She explains that he's looking for them and Lewis knows how not to find them. They all agree that he can help steer Zane away from the no-go zones like Mako Island. And so this leads Lewis to calling Zane and telling him that they're back on. We then see them out on their first mermaid hunt together, where Zane almost catches a glimpse of Cleo, but luckily she sees them in time and is able to escape. And again, I just wanted to apologize for all of this exposition, but with this episode in particular, I just really wanted to highlight how adamant Zane is about all of this mermaid stuff, as it makes for a much better payoff in the end, and also helps us understand his character a little bit better. Moving on to episode 15, where we don't have much, but there are a few subtle moments. First of all, Emma hires Rikki as a waitress at the Juice Net. Miriam and Zane then walk in, and Emma tells her to go serve them and to be nice. She then calls Zane a psycho and asks why she should be nice, and Emma retorts that they are still customers. So Rikki walks over and Miriam asks why Emma isn't the one serving them. And Rikki says that that's because Emma is the boss and so she's given her the dirty work. Later, Rikki comes back with the wrong order for Miriam. Miriam calls this rude and then asks Zane why he doesn't do something to get them fired. And Zane says because he doesn't care, which I kind of loved. Meanwhile, Miriam breaks into the cool room and turns off the cooler as payback. Emma realizes that the cooler has been shut off as she notices things starting to melt, and so she quickly uses her powers to refreeze everything, not realizing that Miriam is still in the freezer as she freezes her as well. Later, Rikki is able to help in defrosting her as she uses her powers, but then during this, Zane shows up and asks where Miriam is. He is then suspicious as to why they're all there before 7 a.m., and then Rikki is the one who knows how to get rid of him. She tells Cleo to ask Zane for help as he won't like that, and this works and Zane leaves. And then we get back to Mermaid Hunter Zane. In the following episode, he has the idea of going to Cleo for help, as she works in a marine park that has a research facility. So he goes up to her and asks for a word with her. Rikki then chimes in saying that Cleo wouldn't waste her breath talking to him, but then he retorts that she wastes it daily on her. Cleo then tells him that it's okay and that they can talk, and then once they're alone, he asks if he can use the research facility, but of course he lies about his real intentions. Cleo agrees to this, but then later finds out what he was actually doing and gets upset with him. But then this whole episode just kind of turns into a farce where everyone thinks that something's going on between Cleo and Zane, when obviously there's not, and so we don't need to get into all of that. But now it is finally time for episode 18, which is when things really kick into gear. So Zane goes to Cleo's dad for help. Her dad is a fisherman, and so he asks to borrow some of his equipment, but Cleo's dad wants some solid proof first. So this brings Zane to go back to the shipwreck, and he takes the door that Emma bashed in with her tail. He then offers a reward for anyone who can tell him what did this. This leads to him and Dawn going over all of the weird events that have happened in the water over the years, and they conclude that the proximity to Mako is the one thing that they all have in common. Meanwhile, it is a full moon, and crazy things happen to the girls if they look at the reflection of the full moon in water. So Rikki does this by mistake, and then this causes her powers to go out of control. This then brings her to Mako, where she ends up lighting all of the trees around her in flames. Back to Zane, who is still determined to solve his mystery. He gets on his boat and heads out into the water. He quickly notices a fire on Mako, and so he goes to investigate. Once on the island, he finds Rikki amongst the flames and asks her what's going on. She doesn't reply, and so he sits down beside her, asking if she's okay. She tells him that she's fine, it's just that she can't do it anymore. That it's all just too hard and nobody understands. He then tells her that he knows exactly how that feels, and then asks her what happened here as he picks a leaf out of her hair and tells her that she's a mess. She then looks at him, and infected by the light of the moon, she leans in to kiss him. Now, this is something else that happens during a full moon, as the girls seem to go a little boy crazy and kiss them. At least they did in the first season, as we saw this previously with Emma and Byron. I'm not too sure if this happens with any boy or if they have to have feelings for them. I guess that part is up to interpretation. But nonetheless, the heat from her passes on to him during the kiss, and he panics before passing out. We then zoom out and see that Rikki has created a perfect ring of fire around them.
What happened here? You're a mess.
So I feel like this ship just went from like 0 to 100 real quick. First off, I absolutely believe Zane when he tells her that he knows how that feels. Just from what little we've seen so far of his home life, it's not hard to imagine that he didn't exactly grow up in a loving environment. And obviously their problems are very different. It's not like he's been cursed with being half fish for the rest of his life. But I do like how they are able to relate to one another on how they're feeling. Also, that moment where it pans out and you see that perfect ring of fire that Rikki has created is just so good. The following morning, Louis, Cleo, and Emma arrive at Mako. They're quick to notice Zane's boat docked on the shore and worry what Rikki might have done to him. The funny part being that I'm sure kissing him is not very high on that list. They're quick to find Zane passed out in the smoke and Rikki in the fetal position. They ask her what she did to Zane, but she doesn't reply. They then conclude that they have to get her into the moon pool and then she'll be safe. Louis then tells them that Zane is breathing, but he's extremely hot and dehydrated, and so he's got to get him out of there. So Louis brings Zane home and the girls bring Rikki to the moon pool. It doesn't seem to work at first until she finally awakens from her moon trance and asks what they're all doing there. In the end, Zane enters the juice bar with what looks like a sunburn on his face. Rikki quickly hides, putting on her sunglasses so that he won't notice her, but he goes up to her anyways and asks her what she was doing at Mako last night. She tries to play dumb, but he's adamant that she was there and that something really weird happened. He then trails off before saying that what he means is that that must have been one hell of a kiss. Rikki is shocked to learn that she kissed him, and then he continues, saying that he can't remember anything that happened after that and asks her if she can. But then instead of answering him, she sternly tells him to look. She says that what she does and why she does it is none of his concern. He then asks what about all of the stuff that she said, but she says that it's exactly that, just stuff, and tells him to forget about it. Now, confused, Zane looks around briefly before calling them weird and leaving.
That must have been one hell of a kiss. Because I can't remember anything after it happened. Can you?
Look, Zane, what I do and why I do it is none of your concern.
What about all the stuff you said?
What I said is exactly that. Stuff. Forget it, okay?
So first of all, I understand that this is just kind of how Rikki is. She can be very blunt and harsh sometimes, but it's just like with this situation in particular, I hate how she says that it's none of his concern when like it is his concern. She kissed him and then he blacked out, doesn't remember anything that happened afterwards, and now he has a giant burn on his face. And I understand that Zane doesn't exactly have the best track record and that they're trying to keep their secret under wraps, but I still feel like he deserved some sort of explanation here, even if the explanation was a lie. Anyways, after Zane leaves, Cleo asks Rikki if she kissed him. She says maybe, that she doesn't know, but then asks her for a mint just in case. She then tells her that she has no idea what she did and that she can't remember anything, but concludes that something really weird definitely happened. Then we jump forward to episode 20, where things really start to change for the couple. First off, we come to see that this interaction had a bit of an effect on Zane. This comes after they bump into each other while she's leaving the juice bar, and Zane turns around to look back at her, which we all know, thanks to Andy Mack, means that he has feelings for her. We then move on to Zane's dad's seminar, where he spots Rikki there. He asks her what she's doing there, and she asks the same thing back. He argues that he asked her first, and then she makes fun of him for this, asking if he's 10. He then caves and admits that he's helping his dad with his seminar, saying that he begged him to come along and play the role of dutiful son. But then he says that it's totally boring. She tells him that he's right there before leaving, and once again he watches her go. Later, Zane spots Rikki again and tells her that lunch is that way, but then she explains that she's there with her dad and he forgot to book, and so now the restaurant's full. And then they are interrupted by his dad. He scolds Zane for not seeing him in the seminar, and he tells him that he missed an opportunity to learn something. He then tells him to make himself useful and go look for the notes that he left in their suite. Zane argues that he's talking to someone right now, but his dad doesn't listen to him, telling him instead that they're on the table as you go in. After he leaves, Zane tries to excuse his dad's behavior by calling him a stress head. Rikki asks why he can't just go up and get his own notes, and Zane says because he's important and he's not. She says fair enough, and then tells him that she'll catch him later as she needs to eat. But then as she's walking off, he calls after her and tells her that there's lots of food upstairs in his dad's suite. She declines, but then he calls after her again, telling her that the fridge is full and if his dad misses anything, then it's a good bonus to tick him off. She then smiles in agreement to this. In the room, Zane talks about his dad's relationship with the hotel while Rikki goes out on the balcony. She admires the view before turning, asking him if he sees this. He then reluctantly steps out to join her, and in doing this, the balcony door slides closed. They then hear an electronic beep, causing them to both turn back to the door. Zane then tries to open it, but realizes that he can't and tells Rikki that it's locked. We then see Ricky's phone ringing on the inside table, showcasing that she doesn't have it on her. He then sarcastically calls this situation perfect, as she argues that he was the one who asked her to come up with him. He then asks for a truce, saying that they're stuck here and so maybe they can pretend like they don't hate each other, at least for a few minutes. She agrees before scoffing, saying that she never should have come to this stupid seminar, saying that the whole thing is a scam. She then goes on to call his dad and all of the other speakers crooks. Zane agrees, shrugging and telling her that he's not arguing with her. We later see them flying paper airplanes off the balcony, using the papers that his dad asked him to get for him. Zane then gets stressed as he pulls at his tie. She asks what's wrong, and then he says nothing, but then gets upset. He tells her that he never should have listened to her and asks why she had to come out here in the first place. He then begins to hyperventilate, and this causes Rikki to ask if he's afraid of heights. And this may seem like it's kind of coming out of nowhere, but he was hesitant to come outside in the first place, and so this explains why. Anyways, he continues to breathe deeply as she steps closer to him, telling him that it's okay, and that everybody's afraid of something. He then turns to ask her what she's afraid of, and she pauses before getting an idea. She then grabs his arms and tells him to come here. He fights her on it, but she encourages him, telling him to trust her as she pulls him to the edge of the balcony. She then asks him to pretend like she's a painting or something else that he admires. He is confused by this, and so she goes on by adding or a speedboat or some stupid expensive car. Something that makes him happy. His breathing then starts to ease up as he looks at her and smiles. She asks if he feels any better, and he says yes before thanking her.
Pretend I'm a painting or something you admire.
A painting?
Or a speedboat or some stupid car. Something that makes you happy. Feeling better?
Yeah.
Now, this part just makes me squeal because it is so obvious that he doesn't have to do any imagining. The smile that he makes when he's staring at her, I feel like speaks for itself. And in my opinion, he was clearly able to calm himself down just by admiring her, which is just so adorable. And I also think that this is the moment where Rikki either starts to feel something for him or realizes that she already does, because this is the first time that we get a look back moment from her. As after he walks off, she looks back at him. Later, we see them sitting by the ledge talking. and they're basically having the competition as to who has the worst dad. Rikki says that every year he forgets her birthday, but Zane argues that that's nothing, as one year his dad took him on vacation to the South Pacific. Rikki asks what's so bad about that, but then he reveals that he left him there when he was only 10, leading him to have to catch a plane back by himself. Rikki then agrees that he wins. He then goes on to explain further that it's been a mess ever since his mom left, and how he feels as though his dad just doesn't really like him all that much. This causes Rikki to come to the conclusion that that's why he's such a jerk. He then teases her, telling her to shut up, and then she laughs, and then she tells him that he doesn't have to be like that all the time. Now, this whole episode I love, obviously, but I really love this moment in particular. I like how she's trying to relate to him by talking about her own dad's faults. I was a bit caught off guard at first to be reminded of her saying this though, because I feel like in the second season they show that her and her dad have a pretty solid relationship, but I guess her dad also isn't exactly perfect in that episode, and so him forgetting her birthday isn't exactly hard for me to imagine. Getting back to the scene, Rikki then confesses that she wasn't at the seminar with her dad today, but instead she came by herself, and that the restaurant wasn't filled up either, she just didn't have any money left after she paid for the seminar. He asks if she paid for it herself, and she agrees that that was dumb of her, but argues that not everyone is rich. She further explains that her parents split up too, and that they were always arguing over money, and so she wanted to learn more to get some security. And the fact that this teenager actually felt the need to do this just makes me so sad, and also gives you a good perspective onto Rikki's home life. Anyways, he then grabs her hand, telling her to trust him and that money doesn't change anything. She then calls this funny, as she always thought that he was so lucky. Just then, we hear the sound of thunder, and Zane looks up, commenting on how it looks like rain. We then see a couple drops on the railing as Rikki quickly gets up and goes under the awning to hide. Zane then walks over and offers her his jacket. She thanks him, telling him that she doesn't want to get wet. She then smiles as she puts the jacket on before turning back to him. This close proximity then causes them to share a bit of a moment. He then touches a strand of her hair before they both lean in. But unfortunately, they do so right as his dad returns to the suite and opens the sliding door.
Do you want this?
Thanks. I don't want to get wet.
Now it's funny because we have technically seen them kiss already at this point, but I just feel like this moment is still just so different in comparison. This time it's real, this time they both genuinely bonded with one another, and then the contrast of the two scenes I just feel like is so perfect. How in the first one they were surrounded by fire and heat, whereas now it's cold and raining. Anyways, Harrison is quick to scold Zane, asking what's wrong with him, saying that he waited all afternoon for his notes, and then the hotel staff handed him paper airplanes made out of them. Zane argues that they were trying to get someone's attention, and Harrison asks by ruining his notes. Rikki then comes to his defense, saying that it wasn't like that. He then tells her that he wasn't talking to her and asks her not to lie. He then goes even further, turning back to Zane and telling him that if he has to waste time with a girl, to at least pick one with a future like one of the girls down at the seminar. Zane yells back that her name is Rikki and that she was one of the girls down there at the seminar, only smarter because she didn't fall for it. He also adds that he's not his errand boy, and so he can stop treating him like one. Rikki then goes to leave and tells Zane's dad that she would say that it was nice to meet him, but that would be a lie. In the hallway, we see Rikki walking slowly and smiling to herself. She definitely has that like post moment with the guy like glow, which I just love to see. She then gets to the elevator, but Zane runs after her and stops the doors from closing. He then tells her to wait and then looks at her and tells her that she still has his jacket. She takes it off and hands it back to him, and then they both take a step forward and lean in for a kiss. Afterwards, Rikki steps back into the elevator and the door closes as she smiles to herself. Now, while their first kiss was definitely a lot more shocking and dramatic, I once again just love the contrast of it with this one. I love how this time it's a lot more innocent and gentle. It may have been just like a little peck, but I still think that it was perfection. And I absolutely love Rikki's reaction afterwards, how she purses her lips and tries to bite back a smile. It's just like the perfect moment in my opinion. But moving on to the following episode where Rikki shows up late to her plans with Emma. Emma is surprised that she even showed up at all, and Rikki admits that she has has been a little bit inconsistent lately. Emma isn't fazed by this though, as she says that she knows that she'll tell her about it when she's ready. Which I honestly love that that was her response. I feel like it was very healthy and mature of her to say that. But they then meet up with Cleo and Miss Chatham comes over as well. So Miss Chatham is a lady whose boat Zane sank when Emma had to save him. And she was also a mermaid when she was younger, and so now she's been a bit of a mentor to the girls. She reminds them all to be there for one another, and Cleo says that there is no secrets between the three of them. Miss Chatham then looks to Rikki, which causes her to look down guiltily. And so now I'm like, somehow Miss Chatham seems to know about Rikki and Zane, or at least that Rikki is keeping something from them. Not exactly too sure how, but maybe it's like a former mermaid thing. We then see Rikki on the beach and Zane runs up to her. He asks her when, and she asks when what, and so he asks when they're going to go out. She asks if he means the two of them and then tells him to forget it, but then he argues that they can't disappoint everyone like that, asking how her friends are going to be able to tell her that he's no good for her if she won't even go out with him. He then includes his friends as well, saying that they're just waiting for the chance to hassle him about going out with the freaky weird girl. And now I was kind of confused here because I feel like they made it look like Rikki was flaking on her friends to hang out with Zane, whereas now they're making it look like this is the first time that they've talked since their kiss. But I guess you could argue that maybe they have been hanging out and this is the first time that he's asked to like put labels on it and actually ask her out. Or maybe she was just flaking on them because she was still processing what happened and going over how she feels for him and feeling bad about keeping all of this from them, but honestly, who knows. Zane then continues to beg, saying that a lot of people have a lot riding on this, and she jokes saying that she's surprised that he even has friends before telling him that they can't and to forget it. He argues that she might be saying no today, but the other day when they kissed, her lips were saying yes. She then says that the list of reasons as to why they should never go out is endless, and that on top of it is that up until a few days ago, the thought of him made her want to hurl. He then asks what about now, and she stutters before saying that she finds him less repulsive. And then he refers to this as progress.
The list of reasons why we should never ever go out is endless. On top of it is the fact that up until a few days ago, the thought of you made me want to hurl.
And now?
I find you less repulsive.
Progress.
Now, I just like absolutely live for scenes like this. I personally feel like it's what makes ships like this so good. The teasing, the flirting, the refusing to go out because of what people might say, and then also the mentioning of the previous hatred, like it's all just so good. But then they see Miss Chatham on the boardwalk. Zane asks what she's looking at and Rikki says the two of them. He then asks if she's hassling her, but she says no and that she's harmless. Miss Chatham then leaves and Zane asks again about his offer. Rikki asks if she can think about it and he gets excited, asking if she really means that, but then she says no and walks off. Moving on, this interaction with Miss Chatham leads Zane to have a bit of a breakthrough in his mermaid hunt. He finds a video from the 50s of this man claiming to have been saved by something in the water, and a young Miss Chatham found him on the beach. The fisherman then shows a drawing of what he saw, and it's identical to the one Zane made. This then brings him to the conclusion that Miss Chatham knows something about the creature. So then he goes to Emma's to try to figure out where Miss Chatham lives. But of course, Emma doesn't give him any information. Meanwhile, Rikki is listening in on this conversation, and afterwards Emma asks her what they're going to do about him. Rikki then concludes that maybe she needs to talk to him, and then this causes Emma to ask why he would listen to her, obviously unaware of their recent development. Later, Zane finds Mrs. Chatham at the marine park. He demands that she tell him all that she knows, but she avoids all of his questioning. He then concludes that if she doesn't want to talk, then he'll have to have another look at her boat. This then causes Mrs. Chatham to worry, as she tells Cleo about a photo of her and her friends as mermaids that's on her boat. Cleo then tells the others about this and they all start to panic, and this leads Rikki to excuse herself as she thinks that she might be able to put an end to Zane's mermaid hunt. So she finds him at the juice bar about to head out to the wreckage, and she stops him in his tracks. She tells him that she won't go out with him because he's obsessed with this sea monster thing and calls it nuts. Deflated, he just thanks her for sharing and moves past her, but then she tells him that if he drops it, then maybe they can talk. He then asks when, but then Nate interrupts, asking if they're going. He then says that they are and apologizes to Rikki as he just has to see this through.
You want to know why I won't go out with you? Because you're obsessed. This sea monster thing is nuts.
Okay, thanks for sharing.
I mean it. Drop it and maybe we can talk.
Yeah? When?
Are we going?
Yeah. Look, I've got to see this thing through.
I'm sorry.
And I don't know, like at first I just wanted him to be so into Rikki that he just drops everything and immediately agrees to her terms. But honestly, after some reflection, I'm just like, they've only kissed once for real, and their relationship is still quite new, if you can even call it that. And so I don't know, I kind of like that he is so passionate about this thing that no matter what she says, he just has to see it through. And also she just like insulted him and called him nuts, so like why would he choose her? But during all of this, Emma has gone to retrieve the photo from the boat. Unfortunately though, she's not quick enough, as right when Zane gets there, he sees her leaving. So tail and body, he sees it all along with her recently dyed bright red hair. Which is another thing that happened in this episode where Emma tried to dye her hair, but it only stuck when she was a mermaid. So this obviously helped her keep her cover after Zane sees her, but she does end up dyeing it back by the end of the episode. So the girls later enter the juice bar to hear Zane telling everyone what he saw. He says that it was more than just a shape or a shadow, that he saw her clear as day, a mermaid. He then says that he's going back, that there's a mermaid out there, and that he's going to prove it. He asks who's coming with, but then Emma replies asking if he's completely lost it. They then continue to grill him about this mermaid, and in the end, Emma says that she thinks that the oxygen from his brain cut off. And once again, I know that they're doing all of this to keep their cover, but if I'm being honest, I do kind of feel bad for Zane. They're all just gaslighting him so hard, and in public too. Like, I know that Zane has his faults, but he really has grown on me, and now I just feel bad for the guy. That being said, we end the episode with Rikki following Zane out. She yells at him to wait, and he asks if she wants to humiliate him some more, but she jokes that there's no audience and so there's no point. She then tells him that she wants to go out with him, but the mermaid talk stops. She admits that she likes him, that she doesn't know why, but she does. He repeats back, no mermaids, and she says that's the deal, take it or leave it. He smirks before agreeing, and the two walk off.
I like you. Don't ask me why, because I have no idea, but I do.
No mermaids.
That's the deal. Take it or leave it.
Okay. No mermaids.
So I like this much better than Rikki's last attempt. First of all, she's not insulting him, but instead she's being honest and leaning into her feelings for him. And I do think that that does really show through. I don't even think that you could argue that she's doing this just to keep their secret, because I feel like that smile just speaks for itself. Like, that girl has caught feelings. And something else that I think proves this is that she then goes on to keep their relationship a secret from her friends. If she was just doing all of this to keep him quiet, then she could have easily told her friends that. But obviously she does have feelings, and so she can't do that. And I'm happy that that is the case, because I just absolutely love a dating in secret plotline, even if it is only for an episode. So moving on to episode 22, Cleo and Emma end up seeing the couple walk out of a romantic movie together. Emma assumes that she probably just bumped into him and is being polite, but then Cleo argues that Rikki is never polite. They then see Zane put his arm around her and are shocked. The next day at school, Cleo and Emma tell Louis what they saw and conclude that they're dating. They then ask him to follow them around today and report back to them. Louis, then being the voice of reason, argues that she's just waiting for the appropriate time to tell them, and then Rikki interrupts. They try to slip her up by mentioning the movie that they saw her walk out of, but this doesn't work, and then they all head to class. On the way, Louis bumps into Zane. They get into it a bit, and then after he leaves, Cleo calls him a loser, and Emma calls him a waste of space. They then notice that Rikki didn't say anything, but instead speeds up a bit to walk in front of them. Which honestly makes me think that this might be Rikki's first dating in secret endeavor, because anyone versed in the matter would know that you have to save face. And so if that means throwing in an insult here and there to keep your friends off your trail, then you do it. I feel like you gotta do what you gotta do. That's just dating in secret 101. Moving on to after school, where we see the gang report back to each other. They all share that they didn't see anything out of the ordinary today with Zane or Rikki. That is until they notice that neither of them are there. And then we cut to the two of them at the mall together. He brings up mermaids and she calls him out for this. He then apologizes and says that he won't mention it again, but then says that they should go out and look for her together. Just then, Rikki notices a red dress in a shop window. She calls it gorgeous and asks Zane what he thinks. He is surprised, saying that he didn't think that she wore dresses like that, and and she retorts that he should stop thinking that he knows everything about her. She then says that she likes to dress up sometimes when she's in the mood. He encourages her to try it on, but she says that by the time she could afford a dress like that, she'd be too big to fit into it. Which is a bit of an unnecessary comment, but it is 2006 to be fair. Rikki then gets interrupted by a phone call from Emma, and so she leaves to answer it. Now alone, Zane seems to get an idea while looking at the dress. Moving on, Emma asks Rikki to meet them at the moon pool. Once she gets there, she realizes that she swam into a bit of an intervention, as the girls reveal to her that they know all about her and Zane. Rikki is upset that they dragged her all the way out there just to tell her that, and Emma is surprised that she's not even trying to deny it. Rikki then retorts that she was going to tell them once she thought that they were mature enough to handle it, and Cleo chimes in saying that they don't keep secrets from one another. Rikki argues that she doesn't see what all the fuss is about, although I have to call her bluff here because if there was no fuss, then she would have just told them, and she wouldn't be acting so defensive right now. Cleo then reminds her that he's practically hunting them, and Rikki shakes her head saying that they're misunderstanding him. That all of the obnoxious stuff is an act most of the time that he uses to keep people away. But Emma continues, arguing that Zane is going to keep looking for his mermaid, and her going out with him is just going to bring him closer to them. Rikki then sarcastically thanks them for thinking so highly of her, and Emma begs, saying that they all have to make sacrifices and that it's too dangerous for her to keep going out with him. Rikki argues that she doesn't interfere with their lives and so they should stay out of hers, and that maybe they should try showing a little trust. Emma then insists that Zane is the one that they don't trust and it's up to her to make a decision between them. Rikki then finishes by saying that friends don't give each other ultimatums, and then she swims off, which I honestly think was a great note for her to end on. Meanwhile, Zane has returned home to his dad's questioning. They go back and forth for a little bit before he tells him that he's hosting a luncheon on Saturday that he wants him to be there for, suggesting that he bring Miriam with him. Zane argues that he has nothing to say to Miriam, and his dad agrees that she's no Oxford graduate, but says that she looks good. Zane then says that if he has to come, then he wants to invite someone else, which is Rikki. Harrison argues that this is an important lunch for him, that he wants to impress some prospective investors and present a strong family image, and then he goes on to say that Rikki is the exact opposite of the type of girl he wants him to bring, asking what he even knows about her. Zane argues enough to know that he likes her. Harrison asks if he's met her family or knows anything about her background, and Zane says no. He asks how he can like her then if he doesn't know anything about her, and then we end with Zane telling him that he'll be at his stupid lunch. Now, this scene, along with the previous Rikki intervention scene, are played at the same time, and I honestly think that that was a really great choice. It's a great way of showing that they're both going through the exact same thing. Both people in their lives feel as though they shouldn't be together, whether that's because they want to preserve a mermaid secret or preserve a family image. They're both going through the exact same thing, and I feel like this was a perfect way of showcasing that. Moving on to the day of the luncheon, we see Zane find Rikki at the beach. He wishes her a happy birthday and gives her a gift box. Rikki says that it's not her birthday, but then Zane tells her not to argue and to accept the gift. She is then shocked to see that he did buy her that red dress from earlier. Red dress! Sorry. She then asks if he's crazy, and then he asks her if she still wanted it. She says of course and that she loves it, before hugging him and thanking him for it. He then asks her if she's in the mood to wear it right now, and then she looks back at him perplexed.
Are you crazy?
Do you still want it?
Of course I want it. I love it. Thank you.
So do you think you're in the mood to wear it right now?
So obviously I love this moment, and I definitely think that it's safe to say that gift giving is one of Zane's love languages, or at least it was in the beginning, which makes sense, and is also just so sweet because as we know, Rikki didn't really grow up with much, and so I just love the fact that he just wants to spoil her. I also like how he brings up the comment of her needing to be in the mood to wear it, and how he immediately asks if she still wants it. I feel like that was a brief show of his insecurity, which I just found to be so humbling and adorable. But anyways, Lewis then walks by and he ends up seeing the two of them. This brings him to tell Cleo what he saw, and then she starts to panic about their relationship being more serious than they previously thought. She then worries as she feels as though Rikki isn't going to be able to keep their secret for much longer. She then calls Emma to tell her, but it turns out that she already knows. As we then get to the luncheon and see that Emma and her parents are one of the guests. Then we come to find out what the purpose of this luncheon is, as Harrison shares his plans to develop Mako Island. Zane then cuts in saying that it might not be a good idea to do so as he hasn't seen what he has out there. Harrison is quick to shut him down, but then one of his investors encourages him to keep going. So Zane says that he knows that this might sound crazy, but it's true, that he's seen a mermaid out there and that he thinks that she lives somewhere near Mako. Now, embarrassed, Harrison tells them all not to believe a word his son says and that he just brings him along for comic relief. He then continues to talk about his plans, but this time Rikki cuts in. She calls his design as well as his home ugly and asks why anyone would want to ruin nature for the sake of a piazza, or asks how anyone could enjoy their holiday while knowing that 16 species were wiped out so that they can sit by the pool and sip overpriced drinks. Now, I just wanted to say that I obviously understand Rikki's motivation here and that she is trying to stop all of this from happening. And again, I do understand that this is just kind of how Rikki is and that she can be very harsh and blunt with her reactions sometimes. But with this scene in particular, I kind of think that she took things just a bit too far. To put it into perspective, she is still a guest in this guy's home, and like, yes, I understand that he kind of sucks, but I just kind of feel like there are better ways to voice your opinions that don't include insults. Although, to be fair, Harrison doesn't exactly hold back either, as he tells her that feedback is always important, even from people who will never be able to afford to live in a place like this. Zane then interrupts, asking to have a word with Rikki. Once they're alone, he tells her that she has to cool it, that this is his dad's lunch and that this business stuff is his thing, but then she asks if those are his thoughts or his dad's. He argues that this is not the time or place to be making an issue, but Rikki doesn't budge, asking if he always takes his dad's side even when he knows that he's wrong, and if he can at least try thinking for himself, or does he have to ask his daddy first?
You have to cool it. This is my dad's lunch. This business stuff is his thing.
Are they your thoughts or your dad's?
This is not the time and place to be making an issue.
Do you always pick your dad's side, even when you know he's wrong? Can you at least try thinking for yourself? Or do you have to ask Daddy first?
So this is kind of like their first real fight, and surprisingly enough, although I feel like the show kind of wants us to pick Rikki's side, I think I'm Team Zane on this one. I mean, he basically just said everything that I did, and I understand that this topic is very weighted in a way that Zane isn't really aware of, and that her reaction was quite unfiltered, but I feel like she makes the jump to Zane not thinking for himself a bit too quickly and unfairly. I mean, we saw him try to voice his opinion in the beginning even before Rikki did, and he got immediately shut down. So I just feel like it's a bit more of a complicated situation than the show is making it out to be. Anyways, Rikki then goes to the moon pool to cool off, and then she swims back to Zane's. When she gets back, Emma is still fighting, saying that Mako is unique and that it's been untouched for thousands of years. Rikki then chimes in, saying that she's right, that developing Mako is wrong, greedy, and not to mention stupid. She then goes on to hit the key environmental factors, saying that the water around the island is home to the largest population of Mako sharks, the dolphins in the lagoon, the rare green turtles, the soft corals that aren't found anywhere else in the world. All of this and more will also be on the list that she's sending over to the Environmental Protection Agency. She also threatens contacting the press and starting a petition. And now I think this approach is much better than her previous one. She's hitting all of the main points and being a bit more respectful in doing so, minus the stupidity comment. Obviously, like I said before, it was a bit more of her raw reaction, whereas now she's being more strategic with it, which I really like. I mean, it also shows her drive and ability to stand up for what she believes in, which I think is great. Rikki then turns her attention to Zane and gives him the dress back. She tells him that if he wants to keep going on playing ventriloquist dummy to his dad, then he can forget about being with her. That she's no Miriam, and so he can either stay or come with her. He then smiles and takes her hand, leaving with her as his dad yells for him to sit back down. So a great moment, and I really like where this episode ended up. We then end with Rikki and Zane on the boardwalk as Zane is basking in what they've just done. He tells Rikki that he's feeling monumentally great, which I love for him, and she asks what if his dad cuts off his allowance. Zane doesn't care though, saying that if that happens, then he'll just get a job, and that it just felt so good to stand up to him like that. He then says that he also loved what she had to say, before asking if she believes him, if she believes that he actually saw a mermaid. And then she settles on saying that she believes in him. This is good enough for Zane as he puts his arm around her and the two of them walk off.
So do you believe me?
Believe you what?
Believe I saw a mermaid.
I believe in you, Zane.
So a great note to end the episode on, and I loved getting to see Zane's newfound confidence and joy at standing up to his dad, showing that she is starting to have a positive influence on him. So while this did wrap things up for the couple, we do still have one more moment between the girls in this episode. So Rikki meets up with them, and Cleo praises her for sabotaging Harrison's plans. Rikki then calls them out for not interrogating her anymore, and they apologize for underestimating her. They then make a pact to no more secrets, and Rikki says that she'll work on it. This leads Cleo to ask her what she even sees in Zane, and Rikki smiles before admitting that he gets her. And I just love this moment because it's basically what I've been saying all along. We haven't even had that many episodes of them together yet, but they've still managed to do such a great job at building their foundation and showcasing how well they relate to one another and understand each other on a level that neither of them have experienced before with anyone else in their lives, which is honestly one of the main selling points for this ship, in my opinion. On to our next episode, where we begin with Zane and Rikki getting ice cream together. He then pulls her closer, and she accidentally smushes her ice cream all over his shirt. She laughs before telling him that he should really watch where he's going. He sees this as a challenge, and so he replies by putting his finger in his ice cream and then booping her nose. She laughs some more and starts to run away until he catches her. He then threatens her with a face full of ice cream to say sorry, but she says no. He then brings his ice cream closer to her, but then at the last second, he replaces it with a kiss. After they both pull back and laugh as they continue on their walk.
You should, really watch where you're going.
Oh, you want to take me on? Bad move.
Oh!
Say you're sorry.
No.
Then accept the penalty.
No.
And I am just so happy that they included moments like this in the first season. It's just so adorable to see them being all flirty like this with one another, and it also gives us a little window into what their relationship would be like, and I am just so here for it. Zane then goes on to ask what she's doing later and invites her out on his boat. She declines, and so then he tries to convince her by saying that she might even see a mermaid. Not too sure how this would sway her, as she's been very anti-mermaid up until this point, but whatever. Rikki then tells him to forget about the mermaid and that she's not going out on the boat with him. He asks her why, and then also why she's always so secretive, but that's when Rikki notices a necklace on display in a shop window. It immediately catches her eye as it's the same one that Cleo has, and so she goes in to see it, and the shopkeeper explains that it's an antique and so it's $250. After they leave, Rikki apologizes and tells Zane that she has to go, leaving him there confused. And just then, Miriam passes by. She asks Zane what he's doing with Rikki, and he says nothing. He then asks her if girls like getting jewelry as gifts while looking at the locket. She says that they do, but not that, as it looks like something her grandmother would wear. And now I just think that it's funny that Zane is so dating inept that he has to ask Miriam for confirmation as to whether or not girls like getting jewelry, because obviously they do, and I mean, I feel like that's kind of common sense. I would argue even more so than a dress, which was a gift that apparently came more naturally to him. But I guess you could make the excuse that he was just thinking out loud here and not actually asking for Miriam's opinion. And not to mention, Ricky's reaction to the locket was a bit more abnormal in comparison to her reaction to the dress. We later see Rikki trying to gather up enough money to buy the locket. That is until she sees Miriam walk in the juice bar wearing it. Rikki approaches her, and so Miriam tells her that Zane told her how much she admired it, which is why she was so quick to buy it. Without hesitating, Rikki tackles her for it, and then Zane comes in and has to pull her off of her. This causes her to yell at him and ask him whose side he's on anyway. So again, I know that we are still pretty early on in this relationship, but I think it's clear to see that Rikki is struggling with some trust and loyalty issues, which honestly does make sense considering their history with Zane, but this is now the second time where she has accused him of not being on her side when really all he's done is try to de-escalate the situation. And I also think it's kind of funny how people oftentimes talk about Rikki being such a positive influence on Zane. I mean, I just did myself not that long ago, but I do also think that it does go both ways. I also think that Zane could have been a positive influence on Rikki in helping her be able to control her temper more in certain situations like this, but unfortunately they chose to take a different route with this ship. Anyways, Rikki then runs off and Zane runs after her. She tells him to leave her alone, but then he grabs her arm, begging her to talk to him. She then finally turns and asks if he told told Miriam that she wanted the locket. He says no, and then maybe, and then admits that he saw her at the mall and asked her if girls liked getting jewelry. She then sarcastically thanks him for this and then turns away again. He then yells after her that he was thinking of buying it for her. She then yells back at him that it's too late now, that he told her that she liked it, and then she went and bought it just to get at her. She adds that he should have kept quiet and then asks if he still has feelings for her. He says no and then tells her that if it matters this much, then he'll buy her another one. She then tells him that there isn't another one, or there is, but it's part of a set, and then he asks her why it's so important. And then this is when she changes her tune, telling him that it doesn't matter and to forget about it. He calls her bluff, reminding her that she almost tore Miriam apart for it. He then asks her sincerely to tell him what's going on. When she doesn't answer, he admits that he's getting pretty sick of all of these secrets.
Doesn't matter, forget about it.
Forget about it. You almost tore Miriam apart. What is going on? You know what? I'm getting pretty sick of these secrets.
So I feel like this conversation gives us a bit more insight into what Rikki's feeling. I know we just talked about her being unsure as to where Zane's loyalty lies, but then when she asks if he's still into her, I feel like that just confirms her insecurities as well. And then add on top of all of that, the fact that the conversation then turns into being about all of these secrets that she's keeping. Like, this relationship is still just so new, and I feel like it's not fair that they're giving them all of these problems at once. And honestly, I feel like it is quite impressive that they do stay together for the most part in these first 2 seasons, because at this point it almost feels like everything is working against them. But Zane then goes back into the juice bar and asks Miriam how much she wants for it, as he knows that she only bought it for a laugh. She argues that she bought it because she liked it, and then goes on to ask what happened between the two of them, as they never broke up. This causes Zane to tell her that that was because they were never together, and then he walks off. Things then escalate as later he heads back into the juice bar and receives a proposition from Miriam. She tells him that she's gotten bored with the necklace and will gladly part with it for nothing in exchange. He asks her what the catch is, and she stalls a bit until she sees Rikki walk in. She then tells him that she'll give it to him for a kiss. Stupidly, he leans in and does so. She then takes the necklace and tells him to meet her outside. He then turns to follow her and becomes face to face with Rikki. He pauses before telling her that he can explain, but she shakes her head in response, telling him that she doesn't think that he can. She goes to leave, but he stops her, telling her that he only did it to get the locket. And I personally loved this moment, because how many times do characters in shows and movies go, I can explain, and then don't immediately proceed to explain? I feel like it is such a common trope to just say that you can explain, but then don't go on to do so, and it is just so frustrating to watch. And so I just loved the fact that Zane didn't hesitate in doing so. He then tells her that it didn't mean anything, and Rikki, now upset, tells him that she's glad that kissing someone means so little to him. He then tells her to wait here and that everything will be fine, as he goes outside to get the locket. Outside, he yells at Miriam, calling what she did pathetic. And then Miriam, who is probably still hurt by being dropped by him so suddenly, tells him that he can't seriously be into Rikki as she's not his type. He then asks her if she is, and then she says of course. And just then, Cleo and Emma walk by and end up overhearing all of this. Miriam continues, telling him that they were good together, but then he just tells her to get it into her head that she was never his girlfriend, not now or ever. He then asks her for the locket right as Rikki walks out. She then looks to Rikki and turns around, throwing the locket into the water instead. She then argues that she didn't say that she would give it to him, only that she would part with it, and then she leaves. So not exactly the brightest moves from Zane here in regards to this entire situation. I feel like this should go without saying, but I don't think that you should kiss your ex-situationship no matter the circumstances, because even if he did get the locket back, he would have then had to explain how he got it back. That is, if he chose to do so, otherwise he would have just been lying, which really isn't any better. And then he went on to poke the bear, so to speak, by telling her that they were never anything, which I get why he did do that, as he was upset, but he still needed something from her in that moment, and so I feel like that wasn't the wisest decision. But now with Miriam gone, Rikki goes up to Zane. He tells her that before she says anything, he knows that this was all his fault. She agrees that it is, and then he tells her that he should have known. He then apologizes for kissing her and calls himself a total idiot, which I'm glad that we can all agree on something. And Rikki is as well, as she says that she's glad they got all of that sorted out before going to leave. But then Zane asks her to wait as he takes his shoes off, off and tells her that he's going to get it for her.
Before you say anything, I know this is all my fault.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know this is all my fault.
I know this is all my fault.
But I
It is.
She told me she'd give me the locket. I should have known. I'm sorry I was dumb to kiss her. I'm a total idiot.
I'm glad we've got that sorted.
Wait. I'll get it for you.
And now I just feel like this is the right way to apologize. Because not only did he immediately own up to his actions, but now he's doing something to rectify them. It's exactly what I would have wanted him to do in this situation, and so it just makes me so happy to see him actually do it. So then he goes over to the dock and Cleo starts to panic, as Emma has already gone down there to try to get the locket herself. Meanwhile, Rikki calls after him and asks him what he's doing. He asks her if she wants it, and she says that she does. And so he says that that's all he needs to know before diving in. Cleo then gets upset with her as she tells her that Emma is down there, but luckily she's able to hide before Zane can see her. He then comes back up for air and Cleo tells him to forget about it and that he'll never find it, but then he just yells back at her telling her to watch him. He then goes back down and finds the necklace before bringing it back up. Back at the dock, Zane comes out of the water and apologizes again to Rikki, showing her that he's got it. He hands it back to her and Cleo reminds her that it's wet before she's able to grab it. She then lets it drop and uses her powers to dry it before picking it up herself. This causes Zane to look back and forth between the two of them, asking what's going on as they're both being weird, but Rikki says that it's nothing and thanks him, telling him that it means a lot. She then says that she'll catch him later and he shakes his head before leaving.
What's going on? You're all acting weird.
Nothing. Nothing at all. Thanks a lot for this. It means a lot. So I'll catch you later?
Now, I kind of love this moment just because of how confused it leaves Zane. Obviously, he's sopping wet and so she can't touch him, but he probably expected like a hug at least or something for that grand gesture that he just did. And so I feel like this just pure confusion that he has as he leaves is just perfection. But moving on to episode 24, where we have an upcoming school dance, and this episode tries to highlight each of the girls' love lives. And so we don't get much of Zane and Rikki, but there are a few moments. First of all, Rikki says that she would have no problem in asking a boy to a dance, but then she says that she doesn't need to as Zane already asked her. We later see Zane pick up Rikki and the other girls along with their dates, and we also see them happily dancing together at the dance. But then things take a turn as before the dance, Lewis sprayed them all with a solvent to make them waterproof. This results in all of them becoming very flushed, especially in the face. During the dance, Rikki tells Zane that she's going to get a drink, and then Miriam cuts in saying that now that he's free, they should dance. Rikki goes to intervene, but then Lewis comes telling her that it's time for a top-up. But luckily though, Nate is able to save Zane from Miriam. Later, the girls all realize that they're having a reaction to the spray that's left their skin red, and so they decide to leave. They then head to the moon pool and are upset about the turn of events. Later, Lewis arrives and Rikki asks if Miriam was able to get her claws into Zane, but then he explains that last he saw she was with Nate and his mates as Zane asked him to help him keep her away from him, and then this leads Rikki to rush back to the dance. We then end the episode with Emma and Rikki entering a dance that is now being cleaned up. Luckily though, both boys are still there waiting for them, and then they share a final dance together. And then this brings us to our finale, which means we have some big events coming up. First of all, there's this marine biologist from earlier on in the season that has returned. When we first saw her, she had gotten a skin cell sample from one of the girls and had been monitoring how it would change in water. And so now she's back and hot on their trail, or should I say, tail. Maybe I shouldn't. And so the girls are not happy about her return, but Zane on the other hand is, as he's still been looking for some concrete mermaid proof. So he goes to her research boat and encourages her to keep searching around Mako. We then see some divers leaving underwater cameras at the entrance of the moon pool, as well as the biologist finding one of their scales. Later, Zane approaches her again, asking if she's found anything at Mako, but then she tells him that there's nothing out there. Just then, Rikki walks by and she catches a glimpse of this interaction. This causes her to go over to Zane's later and tell him what she saw. He teases her, asking if she's jealous, as I guess the biologist is attractive. She tells him that she's not, and then he says that she's just conducting research and that it's nothing interesting. Rikki then admits that she heard that she was onto something big, and this spikes Zane's attention as she told him that she didn't find anything. But then she backtracks, telling him that she could be wrong and to just forget about it. But as you can imagine, this just confirms Zane's suspicions as he thinks that she knows something about the mermaid and is trying trying to rip him off. This causes Rikki to ask why he can't just let it go, and he says because it's real. She argues that it's getting old and that she's getting sick of hearing about it, and then goes on to ask why he can't find something more useful to do with his time. This causes Zane to yell back that she's exactly like his father and that nobody believes him. She retorts that maybe there's a reason for that, and then he tells her that she should go. She goes to argue, but then he just tells her to leave and says that he doesn't want to see her right now. Now, I don't want to give any spoilers too early on because people have gotten mad at me about that before in the past, but I am really glad that things are about to change soon because I'm starting to get really sick of these arguments. On one hand, I understand why Rikki is doing what she's doing, as she is just trying to protect them and keep their secret, but on the other, I do still kind of feel bad for Zane. It sucks that his girlfriend isn't able to support him on this, and I just hate how she treats him during these arguments. So I completely understand him just wanting her to leave at the end of that scene, and I actually think that he handled himself really well in that situation. Moving on, we then see Zane go back to Dr. Denman and demand that he know what she's found. But he then gets interrupted by his dad, who is the one that's apparently been funding this research study. And we find out that he's doing this so that his plans for Mako can go ahead. And just then, the underwater camera gets a photo of the girls entering the moon pool. Dr. Denman, Zane, and his dad all see a photo of them. It's a full body shot, but it's from behind, and so you can't see their faces. His dad then apologizes to Zane for doubting him, but says that he needs to keep this a secret. And then after Zane leaves, another photo comes in showing the girls' faces, which of course Harrison decides not to share with Zane. Moving on to our second half of the finale, we find out that Zane does not follow his dad's wishes as he immediately goes to Rikki. He tells her that there are mermaids, that he's seen a photo, and that there's more than one out by Mako. She asks where the photo came from, and he explains. He then tells her that he's not supposed to tell anyone yet, but that he just had to tell her. She fakes a congratulations and then goes on to tell the gang what she now knows. Things then escalate as the researchers go on to kidnap Lewis and use his phone to get the girls back to Mako. And then here it comes. So after the girls arrive, they block their exit, trapping them in the moon pool. And then out comes Harrison, followed by Zane.
Over here. You're just in time. And so are you, girls. You can meet the man who's been funding this.
Extraordinary.
What is this? Rikki?
Now, I hate to say it, but I feel like as far as reveals go, this one isn't as good as it could have been. However, I did still squeal when it happened, and so do with that what you will. Now, obviously, Zane is shocked. He stutters over what's happening and tries to assure the girls that this isn't his fault. Emma tells him that she wishes she could believe that, but Rikki agrees that neither of them do. He then leans down, begging to talk to her, and I just love that this is his reaction. Honestly, I feel like it's the best one we could have gotten. He's not upset at her for keeping this from him, not upset for all the times that she tried to gaslight him. Instead, he immediately understands and he immediately wants to help. And then he's also adamant about the fact that he doesn't want to be blamed for this. And it's hard because on one side, he was the one who was going on about mermaids and talking to anyone he could about what he saw. But on the other, he didn't bring this biologist back and he wasn't the one who put the cameras there. He really has nothing to do with what's going on here other than the fact that his dad is funding this study and that he was asking questions and wanting proof. And I hate to say it, but maybe if Rikki had just told him to begin with, then they wouldn't be in this mess. But of course, Rikki doesn't see it this way and she instead gets upset with him. He asks her how this is even possible and she tells him that it's a long story and says that as far as she can recall, he doesn't have the attention span for that. A bit of an unnecessary comment in my opinion, but go off, Rikki. He tells her that she could have told him, but then she tells him that that's where he's wrong. That he was the great mermaid hunter, he was shooting his mouth off about mermaids any chance he got, and that telling him wasn't an option. She then says that she thought that they had something bigger than this, but obviously she was wrong. He quickly says no and that she wasn't wrong, and then they pause for a passerby.
You could have told me.
See, there's where you're wrong. You were the great mermaid hunter, shooting your mouth off about mermaids every chance you got. Telling you wasn't an option. I thought we had something, Zane. Something bigger than this. But obviously I was wrong.
No, you weren't.
Now, I'm really glad that we get to see Rikki explain here why she felt as though she couldn't tell him. I feel like it gives us some more insight as to what's going on for her internally, and I do understand where she's coming from, but at the same time, I do wish selfishly that she did trust him enough to tell him. Anyways, she then urges him to do something. He says that he can't, that it's too late, that his dad and Denman won't let this go, and so she tells him to forget about it then, that right now him and all of his friends disgust her. And now I'm actually here for this. I feel like this is exactly what Zane needed to hear for him to step up and help. And as we come to see, that is exactly what he does. And then I also just feel like this is such a powerful moment because this whole season, Rikki didn't need help from anybody and would never ask for anything. But then in this moment, she's asking Zane for help. And I think that that's big. So like I said, this kicks Zane into full gear and he quickly goes back to the research boat. He tells the guy there that he needs to get more information out of their guest. And once they're alone, Zane asks for Lewis's help in saving the girls. The two of them then trick the guy that was holding Lewis hostage and they head back to Mako. At the moon pool, Zane tells the girls to get ready to leave as Lewis breaks down the gate. After they hear it come down, they bolt off and Zane smiles to himself. Harrison then asks Zane if he's realized what he's lost, but then Zane argues that what he's lost is him. Meanwhile, Mrs. Chatham advises them to use the lunar eclipse to take away their powers. She explains that as long as they're mermaids, they're never going to leave them alone. And so ultimately, the girls decide to do this. In other news, Harrison decides to pull out of the research project, meaning that they're losing all of their funding, and he says that he's doing this for his son. So a very good note to end on for that relationship. It's just kind of unfortunate that we never see Harrison again after this episode. He came for season 1, made a bang, and then dipped. Kind of like Miriam, we don't see her after season 1 either. But as I explained, the girls remove their mermaid abilities, the research project goes under, and the day is saved. We then end with Zane and Rikki on the beach. She tells him that she wanted to thank him for helping them, and he tells her that it's the least that he could do under the circumstances. And then things get weird as he asks if it's over. And then she says that it just doesn't feel like the relationship is going anywhere. He agrees and says that that's another thing that he's sorry about. She then tells him that it's not his fault and that she just thinks that they're too different.
It's over, isn't it?
Well, this doesn't really feel like a relationship that's going anywhere, does it?
No, and that's another thing I'm sorry about.
It's not your fault. I think we're just too different.
Maybe.
And now I'm just really confused. I think the only explanation that makes sense is that they obviously wanted to have them break up in the finale just so that they could have them get back together in the following season. But it's just so weird because I feel like there was no build up to this, and so I was just completely caught off guard by this entire conversation. I guess you could argue that their initial fight was the build up, or just like all of the events of this season and the secret keeping and then Zane being a mermaid hunter and then Rikki being the mermaid, like maybe all of that has just led them to the conclusion that they shouldn't be together. But I just felt like Zane really came through in the end and proved himself worthy. And clearly he doesn't have any animosity towards her. And she was kind of harsh with him, but I never thought that that meant that they were going to break up. So why does him now knowing about their secret change anything? And also, they're still just such babies. Like, they literally just got into this relationship, and so obviously there are going to be conflicts, especially when you're dealing with two very different people from two very different worlds. But then that was also like the whole point of them, and that they came together despite that. And I feel like Rikki bringing this up as a reason for them to break up is just coming out of nowhere. I just feel like this was a really disappointing note for them to end this season on, especially when this season was my favorite out of the three. But I guess the good thing is that this breakup doesn't last long. So Zane's dad then pulls up and they wave at one another. Rikki notes that they're on speaking terms again, and Zane says that he's making an effort, and so is he. Which I love to hear. I'm really glad that this plotline at least did end on a good note. Rikki then comments on new beginnings all around. He asks her if they can still be friends, and she agrees. And then that is how we end the first season. Which, like I said, is a little bit disappointing, but to be fair, the second season isn't bad either. And before we move on to that, I feel like I should mention that the girls do get their powers back, obviously, as going into the moon pool during the eclipse only took them away for about 12 hours. But with all of that being said, it is time for season 2. And this season definitely gave us our least amount of Zane and Rikki content, mainly because Zane's character goes from main cast to reoccurring, so he's just like overall not really in the show that much in this second season, but it's definitely better than what we get in season 3, and I honestly wish that they could have taken this same approach in that season. But that's a conversation for later, and so I'll save that for then. Before we jump into season 2 though, I do have to give a little bit of a trigger warning. The first episode that we see Zane in does feature a non-consensual kiss, and so if you would like to skip over that, I will have a timestamp on the screen. So Zane makes his first reappearance in episode 3, where we learn that he has a new interest in motocross. And I am resisting the urge to bring up Leon from Violetta, but apparently not hard enough as I just did. But basically, Rikki sees a guy drive past her on a dirt bike and she yells after him, calling him a lunatic. He then stops and takes off his helmet, revealing that he's Zane. He yells back that he's glad that she liked it and asks if she missed him. He then puts his helmet back on and rides off. So a fun little start to the episode and return to the love story. We then see Emma and Rikki together, and I assume that Rikki told her that she ran into Zane, as Emma is stressing over him knowing their secret. Rikki argues that the last time that they saw him, they were normal, and so they'll just have to steer clear of water when they're around him, just like they do with everybody else. Emma then retorts that Zane isn't like everyone else, and that when he wants something, he doesn't give up, using her as an example. She then asks if she's sure that they can trust him, but Rikki argues that they don't have to be sure as they broke up. Emma then admits that she thought that it would be hard for her to see him around again, but she says that it won't be, and that if Cleo can handle being around Lewis after their breakup, which is a story for another day, then she can handle steering clear of Zane. But she later proves herself wrong as she overhears motorcycles revving and follows the noise to a whole dirt bike course. She then sees Zane and he makes his way over to her. He asks her if she couldn't keep away, and then she tells him not to flatter himself. He then admits that it's good to see her again, and she asks how his new school is. And so this is how we find out that he's apparently switched schools and is now attending a boarding school. And so that explains why we don't really see him around as much in this season, at least in universe. I'm not exactly too sure what the real world reason is for that. But he says that it's boring, that he has to wear a uniform, and that they're dedicated to producing the leaders of tomorrow. She then sarcastically replies that that sounds like him, and he says that life must be different for her now that she's normal. She then keeps up the lie, telling him that she likes being a regular girl, but he tells her that he doesn't believe her as he walks over to the cooler. She asks why not, and then he argues that there's nothing normal about her.
Life must be different for you.
What do you mean?
Now that you're normal.
I like being a regular girl.
I don't believe you.
What?
There's nothing regular about you.
Now, I really like this scene. I feel like there's definitely some subtle flirtation there, and I'm so excited to get into their story in this season. But I will admit that at this point, when I watched the show for the first time, I was definitely concerned that they were just going to go through the exact same story beats that we already saw them go through in the previous season. And while that is kind of what happens, this season does have its differences, so I don't hate it. But he walks over to the cooler and then tosses her a drink. Rikki catches it, but unfortunately the drink is covered in melted ice, and so she quickly drops it and goes to dry her hands. He asks her what's wrong, and she lies, saying that she's not thirsty. And now I also think that this is a great moment to have been placed right after she claimed to be normal. I feel like it was a great way to follow that up, and I'm also kind of surprised that he doesn't catch on right then and there. Later, we see Zane invite Rikki on his bike. She declines, but then he continues, asking if she's afraid of him. She tells him that it's not going to happen, but then he argues that he can see it in her eyes and that she wants him back. She says that she doesn't and that it's over, and so then he asks her why she's still there then. She doesn't reply, and so then he says that if that's the way it's going to be, then fine. He then puts his helmet on and drives off. But then as he's doing so, she watches him have a big wipeout on the track. Rikki quickly rushes over to him and panics, calling for help and taking his helmet off. And then while she's freaking out, he quickly kisses her and claims that he knew that she still liked him. Obviously upset by this, Rikki pushes him back down and walks off.
Zane, are you okay? Zane! Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Zane? Help! Somebody! Zane, are you alright?
I knew you still liked me.
Rikki! Rikki, come on!
So yeah, I don't love this. Non-consensual kissing is not my cup of tea, who would have thought? And I'm also just starting to realize that H2O maybe even has even more in common with Violetta than I realized. I even think that Herman plays the same trick on Angie at one point in the series as well. But overall, I just think it is so unfortunate that he does kiss her here and ruin the moment, because I do think that they were on a good path otherwise. And then I'm also just disappointed that he faked all of this, because I do love the trope of someone getting badly injured and then the other person freaking out, obviously showing their true feelings for them. That is, of course, when it is a genuine moment and not something that is orchestrated. Anyways, Rikki heads to the juice bar and Zane is quick to find her. He asks her to hear him out and that he was just messing around and assures her that she can trust him. Nonetheless, she remains firm and tells him no. He then gives up, telling her to think about it before leaving, and all of this also happens in front of Emma. So then she gets upset, asking Rikki what she told him, but she tells her to relax and that she didn't tell him anything. She then tells her that she thought she was going to stay away from him, and Rikki says that she was, and then says that she is and tells her not to worry as he's gone now. Emma tests her, asking her if that's what she wants, and Rikki says definitely. But she then proves herself wrong once again as we later see her back at the track. She is disappointed not to see Zane, and so we then see her finding him at his boat. She tells him that she's been thinking, and so there's a few things that she wants to get straight. He then cuts her off, telling her that if she's here to tell him that they couldn't possibly be together, then he'll save her the trouble, and then he says so himself. She is then shocked to hear him say this and asks if that's what he wants. He yells back no and then asks her what the real problem is. She then goes to tell him but is interrupted by Nate. This causes her to back out again, and then she goes to leave, but he stops her, asking her what it was that she wanted to tell him. But then Nate revs the boat's motor, causing it to spray them with water. Rikki yells at him, calling him an idiot, and then panics, she turns to Zane, asking him to help her. They share a moment before he immediately understands and urges her to get out of there. He then distracts Nate in time for her to make her escape.
You idiot!
What? It's only water!
Help me.
Get out of here now. Now!
Now, this scene stuck with me so much so that when I was doing my rewatch for this video, I completely forgot about the original scene where Zane finds out. I was like, I thought that the reveal happened at the dock. Like, why did I think that? And then we got to this scene and I was like, oh, that's why, because this scene is so much better. The way that she looks to him all panicked and then he's able to immediately understand what's going on, and how he doesn't hesitate in helping her. I feel like it doesn't excuse what he did earlier on in the episode, but it definitely helps his case. Afterwards, Zane finds Rikki at the moon pool. He tells her that he knew that he would find her there and to not worry as he's come alone. She then states the obvious, and that now he knows that she's still a mermaid. He then gets down to her level as she thanks him for covering for her with Nate. He then tells her again that she should have just told him, and she asks what he would have said or done. He then apologizes for all the trouble that he's caused her, but assures her that this time it's different. And then he begs her to just risk it, that he doesn't care about this, about everything, and asks that they get back together. Rikki doesn't reply, and so he continues. He says that for a long time he was the only one around here that believed in mermaids, and so he can handle it. She then admits that she wishes she could believe him, and then he bends down even more so that now they're face to face. He tells her to listen carefully, and then he repeats sincerely that he can handle it. They then both lean in further and share a kiss. After they pull back, he smiles, asking if she believes him now, and she smiles back at him.
Listen carefully. I can handle it. Believe me now.
And now, once again, we have another perfect scene. And don't get me wrong, this ship can still give me some major heartache at times, but when they're good, they're just so good. And I feel like it's scenes like this one that just make it impossible not to love them. I mean, who wouldn't want a story about an ex-mermaid hunter falling in love with a mermaid and then vowing to keep her secret? Like, that is just fantasy novel love story material. And I am just so here for it. We then end the episode with the couple back at the racetrack. Rikki tells him that there's two conditions to them getting back together. The first being being that he has to keep their mermaid identity a secret, and the second being that they don't let Cleo or Emma find out. And again, I know that this is basically what happened in the previous season, except for now he knows the secret right off the bat. But hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. She then tells him that they can't be seen together in public, and so he'll have to say goodbye to her here. He then turns, smiling at her and telling her that she sure makes a lot of rules, but agrees that he'll play it her way and tells her that she knows where to find him. Whenever she wants to see him, just call. She says okay and leans in for a kiss, but then he teases her by putting on his helmet instead and running off.
You sure make a lot of rules, don't you? Okay. Okay. I'll play your way. You know where to find me. Whenever you want to see me, just call.
Okay.
And now I'm sure that this comes to nobody's surprise that I love this as well. I love that he is so obsessed with her and so in love with her that he'll agree to whatever terms she makes. And then also the teasing in this scene was just so adorable, and the little eyebrow raise at the end, like it's just so perfect. Moving on, we don't see Zane again until episode 8, but it is a big one. Like, they really come through with the plot in this episode, and I am just so here for it. So we begin with Nate and Zane riding their dirt bikes in the trailer park. While there, Nate stops and uses a screwdriver to remove someone's Harley logo from their motorcycle. Zane tells him not to, but he doesn't listen to him, and then the owner of the bike comes out and yells at them as they ride off. Later, Zane finds Rikki on the beach and he asks her what's wrong. She then draws his attention to his watch and he realizes that she's mad at him because he's late. He then asks if anyone's ever told her that she's cute when she's mad, and then he reveals the reason why he was late, pulling out a gift box for her. She opens it and finds an iPod Nano inside, and if we weren't convinced already, it is now confirmed that gift giving is definitely Zane's love language. Although I think I did read somewhere that love languages aren't even a real thing, but whatever. She then gives it back to him saying that she can't accept it, but he argues that she can and that he already made a playlist for her. She tells him to take it back anyways and to get a refund, but then he tells her that you can't return them after they're engraved. She then reads the inscription, which tells her to shut up and take the gift, which is funny, and I also love that he knows her well enough to know that she wouldn't have wanted to accept the gift, but I do kind of wish that it was a bit of a cuter inscription than that, I'm not gonna lie. But then she smiles and tells him that if she takes this, then it means that they're a couple. He argues that they could be just friends that go on dates and kiss sometimes. He then tells her to seriously take the gift, no strings attached. She's still hesitant, and so he tells her to repeat after him and say thank you. She does just that, and then he says you're welcome.
Friends who go on dates and kiss sometimes. No, look, seriously, take the gift, no strings attached, really.
But
Repeat after me. Thank you.
thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm kind of confused about Ricky's hesitation not to accept the gift, but to be a couple, because I thought that we already went over in that last episode that we talked about that they were a couple now. But maybe she was just teasing and it made for a good moment, so who cares? Also, can we talk about how nostalgic it was to see that iPod Nano again? Because it was for me. I didn't personally have the Nano, but I did have a little blue shuffle, which I loved dearly. And yeah, none of this is relevant. We later see Zane walking Rikki to what he thinks is her house. She kisses him on the cheek, telling him that she'll see him tomorrow, and then he asks her why she's not inviting him in. She is confused, asking what for, and then he says to meet her dad, that she's met his and so he wouldn't mind meeting hers. She then looks over to the house before telling him that they'll have to do that another day. Zane is confused as to why, as he's there now, but then Rikki says that her dad isn't and that he's probably still at the office. She then thanks him for walking her home and for the gift. He then teases, asking if it's worth another kiss, but then she reminds him that he said no strings attached. She then tells him that she'll see him tomorrow, and he compliments her house as he leaves. So I feel like you guys can all assume as to where this is going just based off of the fact that Rikki is not the best liar, but I'll save my comments for when we get there. Moving on, Zane sees Nate showing off the Harley badge that he stole in the juice bar. Zane tells him to hand it over as he's taking it back, and after some resistance, he does end up giving it back to him. Zane then heads back to put the badge back on the bike, but then the owner catches him doing this and assumes that he's come back to cause more trouble. Zane tries to tell him that he doesn't understand, but then he retorts that he's been working on that bike for months and threatens to call the police. Zane then fights back by saying that he's got this all wrong, and that if he wanted a piece of junk look like this, then he would go buy one himself and it would be a new one. The man then calls him a spoiled brat and Zane hands back the badge saying that the whole thing belongs in the wreckage anyway. And then we pan to see Rikki inside the trailer looking at the scene unfolding through the window. The man, who we now know is Rikki's dad, tells Zane not to come back or else he'll have to teach him some manners, and Zane calls him a loser as he leaves. So now we've got a little bit of a sticky situation, but I will admit that I'm here for all of it. I absolutely love that we're getting some backstory on Rikki's home life, and I just feel like this just adds another layer to the couple's forbidden love story. And just to be clear, I don't blame Rikki for lying. I can see why she would be embarrassed to share with Zane where she actually lives, especially when she's seen firsthand just how well off he is. It's obviously an insecurity for her, and I understand her feeling the need to take her own time with things. After Zane leaves, Rikki comes outside and is clearly upset. Her dad asks what's wrong and she says that she's fine even though she's obviously not. And then he makes a comment about that kid ever showing his face around here again, saying that he's glad that she doesn't hang around with snobs like that. Obviously, unknowingly rubbing salt in the wound and being completely unaware about the fact that he is referring to his daughter's boyfriend. So Rikki then heads to the juice net and meets up with her friends, but then once Zane comes in, she tells them that she has to go. Zane then follows her out, asking her to wait, but she refuses, telling him that she's in a hurry. He then asks her what's with the attitude, and she tells him that she doesn't want to talk about it. They then get interrupted by Lewis, and Rikki uses this to make her escape. She walks off, but he continues to follow her, asking what he's done. She says nothing, but then tells him that he can have this back as she hands him back the iPod. He refuses to take it, asking what's wrong with her, but she just yells back for him to take it and says that she doesn't want his stupid expensive gift. He then goes to respond, but she cuts him off, telling him to leave her alone.
So what have I done?
Nothing. But you can have this back.
No, what's up with you?
Take it, Zane. I don't want your stupid expensive gift.
But
just leave me alone.
So this kind of breaks my heart because on one hand, Rikki just experienced her dad and Zane meeting for the first time, and he basically hates Zane's guts, which really must have felt like a wake-up call for Rikki, and obviously now she feels as though she can't see him anymore. But then on the other, Zane has absolutely no idea what's going on, and so he just must feel so blindsided by all of this. This convo then brings Zane to what he thinks is Rikki's house. He rings the buzzer and a man comes out. He asks if Rikki's home, but then the man tells him that he doesn't know who that is and that there's no Rikki that lives there. And so now Zane knows that she lied to him about where she lives. Later, he finds Rikki outside the juice net. He asks what's going on with her and says that she's being weird, but then she just argues that he's weird all the time. He then stops her in her tracks when he says that he knows that she doesn't live where she said she did. This causes Rikki to get upset and she accuses him of stalking her. Zane, now defeated, just asks if he's done something to make her upset with him. But then she just asks that he leave her alone as she walks off again. He yells after her that they need to talk about this, but she says that they don't, and then she jumps into the water so that he literally can't follow her anymore.
I know you don't live where you said you lived.
Oh, what, so you're stalking me now?
Have I done something to make you mad?
Leave it alone, Zane.
wait.
No, Zane!
We need to talk about this.
No, we don't.
And so honestly now I'm just sad and I really feel bad for Zane. The poor guy is just so in the dark in regards to all of this. And obviously I understand that Rikki is also going through a lot, but I honestly just hate seeing Zane be so helpless. It just makes me sad. And honestly, I really didn't think that I would be empathizing with him this much in this video. So all of this brings Zane to go to the girls, which I also love. I like how he's like, I don't know what's going on, but clearly something is going on. And so he goes to her friends in the hopes that they can help her. All while knowing that Rikki would probably be very upset with him for doing this. Yet the fact that he's able to put her well-being above that, I feel like is just so important and definitely shows off how good of a boyfriend he is. So he tells them that he's worried about Rikki, that the details aren't important, but that she took off in the water fish style. And so he reveals to them that he knows their secret, but says that he doesn't care. He's just asking that they find her and make sure that she's okay. This brings the girls to the moon pool where they find Rikki. They tell her that they spoke with Zane, and Rikki admits that she was going to tell them, which is kind of a lie. She wasn't. She was going to keep it a secret, but who knows, maybe eventually she would have, which makes it not a total lie. Emma tells her that she's not saying that the two of them are a good idea, but that he was very worried about her. Rikki then says that they're just so different, but Emma argues that that shouldn't matter, and if she can't be herself around him, then she's the one with the problem. And I just love this, and I really love the addition of this scene. First of all, it shows us that Zane having gone to the girls helps them see that he could actually be good for her and not terrible as they previously thought. And it also shows just how much Rikki needed to have this conversation. She needed someone who wasn't Zane, who could tell her that she was the one with the problem here. So Rikki then finds Zane working on his boat. He apologizes to her for prying and for her having a hard time letting people in. He then tells her that he gets it now, no more pushing, and that he'll leave her alone if that's what she wants. But then she surprises him by telling him that if he wants to know all about her, then fine, and then she walks off. And then I assume that he follows her as we then see them back at her house. She admits that the guy that he yelled at yesterday was her dad, and that the piece of junk that he vandalized just for fun was his bike. Zane is quick to say that he didn't do anything to the bike and that it was all Nate, but she says whatever and that now he's got the perfect excuse to no longer be into her. She then tells him to just go, but instead he runs after her and tells her that he doesn't care where she lives. He then asks her why she finds it so hard to believe that someone would be interested in her. He then holds onto her hands as he tells her that regardless of where she lives, he likes her. He then starts to back the two of them up, and so now they're leaning against the side of Ricky's house. Their fingers then intertwine as they lean in for a kiss. But unfortunately, that's when her dad notices the two of them, and he quickly makes his way over asking what they're doing.
Why do you find it so hard to believe that someone could be interested in you? I mean, regardless of where you live, Rikki. I like you. I mean, I really like you.
Really?
Really.
Hey, what the blazes you doing?
Now, I don't even know how to put into words just like how much I love this scene. The drama, the scandalous nature of it, all of the sneaking around, like it's just so good. And I can't help but think about a previous situation in which the same thing happened with Zane's dad. Anyways, Zane is then quick to say that he can explain. Rikki tries to as well, but then her dad tells her to be quiet. He then tells Zane that he doesn't know what's going on here, but that he doesn't want the likes of him anywhere near his daughter. And he finishes by telling him to get lost and to never come back. Zane then looks devastated at Rikki as her dad yells now. He then silently leaves, and once he's gone, Terry tells Rikki that he thought that she had better taste. So this is definitely giving me some like iCarly and Griffin era sort of vibes, if you guys know what I mean, but almost better in my opinion. And it also makes me think back to that balcony scene again when they were going over who has the worst dad. Because I remember thinking back to this episode and being like, oh, I thought that Rikki and her dad were quite close, but I guess to be fair, they don't really delve much into the relationship in this episode. I guess I'm just surprised to learn that someone who was so protective over their daughter would also forget about her birthday every year. Nonetheless, Zane still hasn't given up on him, so the next morning, Rikki comes outside to see Zane working on his bike. She tells him that her dad is going to kill him, and then he comes out yelling. He tells him that he warned him right as Zane gets on his bike and gets it to start. He then explains that he wasn't the one who stole the badge and he was trying to bring it back, and Rikki backs him up, saying that he's telling the truth. He then asks if they're square now, and Terry agrees that they are as he reaches out to shake his hand. They then introduce themselves to one another, and he asks Zane to tell him how he fixed his bike. So a very nice resolution, and it makes me so happy to see her dad come around so easily. Maybe even too easily, but we are only dealing with like 25-minute episodes here, so it's whatever. We then end with seeing Rikki at the juice net. Her friends then go on to tease her for her so in love smile, and then she invites them all over for a barbecue at her house for the very first time. We then see them all there together, and just, yeah, it's a perfect way to end this perfect episode. But then we unfortunately have a not so great episode, or I guess it's fine. I do enjoy the ending of it, but it is definitely a bit more of a filler. So Zane then makes his next appearance in episode 11, where we see him run up to Rikki on the beach. He tells her that she's going to love this and then shows her a photo of a yacht. He then explains that it was caught in a storm off the coast a few weeks ago, that the people got off but they lost everything on board, including a genuine Tibetan antique that is worth a fortune. She then argues that as long as it's laying on the bottom of the ocean, it's not, and he says that that's exactly it, and that there's a reward for whoever can find it. She then breaks the news to him that she's not searching the bottom of the ocean for a lawn ornament for him, and then he yells for her to at least think about it as she leaves. And then in perfect timing, Rikki comes to find out that her dad is struggling with paying the bills, and this means that they might have to move again. This then brings Rikki to decide to go hunt for that statue. So we later see Rikki ask Zane about the statue, and he explains that the owners are friends of his dad's, and that they are offering $10,000 for whoever can bring it back. She then says that she thinks that she can, and he agrees. He then gets a map out and they start conducting their plan. Rikki then asks a very important question as she wonders what's in it for him. And I say that this is very important because up until now I've kind of been wondering the same thing. Zane doesn't exactly have a shortage of money, and so I was wondering what would be in it for him. But then he says that he's in it for the glory, which makes sense to me and checks out in regards to his character. He then says that if she helps out, then they can split the money 50-50. She then bargains 60-40, which he agrees to. They then get back to the map and he tells her that they're announcing the reward this afternoon. And so by tomorrow, the whole area will be filled with divers. This means that they only have one day to go look for it. Rikki thinks that it can't be done, but then he argues that it could if they had more than one mermaid. And so this brings Rikki to realize that she has some convincing to do. So she is able to trick the girls into helping them without mentioning the prize money, but they are suspicious of it due to Zane's involvement. We later see them out looking for the statue, but then once they overhear her and Zane discussing the reward, they get upset with her for lying and bail. Nonetheless, Rikki and Zane continue looking for the statue on their own, and eventually Rikki is able to find it. They plan to use a flotation device to bring it up, but then after looking at her, Zane gets worried as she is so exhausted. He then says that they can call it quits and come back tomorrow, but Rikki isn't having it. She then gets upset with him and he argues that he just wants her to be careful. She says that she knows exactly where it is, one more dive and she's got it, and that she can't let it go now that they're this close. And so Zane gives in.
Rikki, you look exhausted. Look, we can call it quits and come back tomorrow.
Oh, that'll make an interesting haul for some salvage crew. A gold statue and a mermaid.
We could get here first thing before anyone else shows.
I said I'm fine. I've put way too much work into finding this thing, and now you're saying I should just walk away.
All I'm saying is just be careful.
And I just really wanted to include this part because I feel like you could argue that Zane is taking advantage of Rikki in this situation, but I feel like this scene makes it clear that she wanted this treasure just as bad, or if not so, even more than Zane did. And then of course it's also just nice to see him so concerned about her well-being, which I also think helps take some of the blame off of him for what comes next. So Rikki attaches the flotation device to bring up the statue, but then on the way up it snaps and falls back down, knocking Rikki unconscious. When she doesn't come back up, Zane is quick to jump into the water. He finds her unconscious and then he brings her up to the surface, and then he begins to panic as she still won't wake up. And I believe that this is actually the one time in the whole series that a human saves a mermaid from drowning. Every other time it's the other way around. And so I just love that it's Zane in particular because it's almost like he's repaying them for all the times that they saved him. And then of course it is also a great moment for the couple to have him save her, and I just can't even begin to imagine how heavy she must have been with that tail. So the fact that he was able to pull her back up I feel like is no small feat. Anyways, he then calls Emma and explains that he got her out of the water and she's breathing but not moving, urging them all to get there fast. Once they arrive, they bring her to shore and Lewis saves the day by using some smelling salts to get her to wake up. Back at Emma, Zane tells her that she really had him worried, but then Emma argues that it serves him right, and Cleo adds that if he didn't pressure her into chasing that reward, then none of this would have happened. But then that's when Rikki comes to his defense, saying that he didn't and she was the one doing all the pressuring. She admits that he told her to forget about it, but she wouldn't, and then when she got hurt, he saved her. And of course I loved this. I love seeing her own up to her actions and defending him, especially when it would have been really easy to just place all the blame on Zane. And then this positive streak then continues as Rikki confesses that she actually needed the money for her dad, that he hasn't been able to cover the bills or rent and that they might have to move. Zane then asks why she didn't tell him, as he can handle any bills that she's got, and she explains that that's why they didn't, as they don't take charity. She also apologizes to the girls for lying to them and they forgive her. Lewis then calls Zane over and tells him that he looked at his plans to raise the crate and that he has a few ideas to help, that is, if he's interested. We then end with everyone having another barbecue at Rikki's. Lewis then comes in late with an envelope for Rikki and Zane calls her over. They then explain that it's a check for the reward and that the two of them salvaged the crate this morning. She tells them that she doesn't take charity, but Zane explains that it isn't, as she's the one who did all the work. He then encourages her to take it as she deserves it, and she finally does. And while I did say in the beginning that I don't exactly love this episode, I just wanted to emphasize again that I do love this. I love seeing everyone back at Rikki's again. I love how Zane was able to save her, and I also love getting to see him working together with her friends. I think that is just so wholesome and such a great development. Moving on to another episode that I don't exactly love, but for very different reasons. And this is another one where I feel like I have to give a little bit of a trigger warning, although I'm not exactly too sure how to word it. So I guess trigger warning for potential drugging is how I'll put that. So we then have episode 15, and we begin with Zane asking Lewis about ambergris. Lewis tells him that it exists, but that it's very rare, and all the stuff about it having magical effects over mermaids is complete rubbish. Zane explains that now that he's going out with a mermaid, he's interested in this sort of stuff. He then adds that if it does have some sort of mesmerizing effect over them, that it could be useful in certain situations. So I feel like you guys can understand now what I was trying to get at before, because I'm just like, Zane, what are you doing looking for this hypothetical thing that could potentially have control over your girlfriend? And I don't understand what ways in which this could be useful to him other than ones that are no good. Nonetheless, Zane later runs up to Lewis telling him that he found it. He now has pure ambergris that was sold to him online from a local antique dealer. Lewis then asks him if he doesn't think that he crossed a line. And once again, we have Lewis being the voice of reason, because as we just said, he literally went out of his way and looked for something that would give him control over his girlfriend. And in my opinion, that is just super weird and offside. However, I do still feel like we kind of have to give Zane the benefit of the doubt because we still don't really know his motives and they're never really made clear in this episode, other than that one comment that he made earlier with Lewis where he said that it would be useful. And it could just be that he wanted to test it out to see if the legend is true and that he wasn't going to do anything without her consent, which is what I hope is the case. And then I also understand that they probably just had an idea for this episode and then they ended up making Zane the catalyst for it. But then he argues to Lewis that he bought it out of scientific curiosity and says that he should be able to understand that. And while I'm not too sure I believe him in these claims, they're definitely better than the ones that he made previously. Anyways, the two then go on to spray some and gag at how awful it smells. They then get into a fight over both of them not wanting to take the bottle, and then they both go, leaving it on the table. After they're gone, Nate finds it and sprays some on himself. He then goes into the juice bar and the ambergris ends up working on all three girls as they all become obsessed and enamored with him. Later, the guys head back to the juice net and notice that the bottle is gone. Ash, who works at the juice bar and is also Emma's new love interest this season, then tells them about Nate being surrounded by the girls. He says that it's like they're mesmerized and it clicks. The boys then walk in to see Nate playing the guitar and the girls dancing around him. Zane then walks over and asks Rikki to come outside for a sec, but then she pointedly says that she's dancing with Nate. He tells her that he sees that and asks if she doesn't think that that's strange, but then she retorts that Nate is hot. Zane then backs away disgusted and tells Lewis that they have to fix this. We then see Nate leaving with the girls and Zane runs over. He is then able to convince him to meet him at the docks alone. And then once he gets there, Zane tells him to hand it over. But Nate is unconvinced that the ambergris is the reason as to why the girls are all over him and tells the guys to face it as he's outgunned them. Nate then heads back to the girls and invites them for a swim. And so now things have escalated. Zane and Lewis are quick to find this out thanks to Ash. And so then they head to the beach to save them from revealing their secret. Once they arrive, they yell for them to stop. Nate has already made it to the water, and with it, the ambergris has washed off of him. And so this causes the girls to awaken from their trance confused. Zane then tells them that it's hard to explain, but says that they've been attracted to Nate, and then the water rushes up to their feet and they have to flee before they transform. As the guys leave, Zane picks up the bottle from Nate's things, and then we end the episode with them dumping the remains of the ambergris in the water. So besides Zane actively going out of his way to find something that would have control over his girlfriend, I would say that this episode isn't exactly the worst, but it still kind of is. It is still a filler, and I feel like it's not the best filler at that, and so I honestly have nothing else to say about it. Now, Zane doesn't make his next appearance until episode 18, which is another one that isn't really about them, but it is a part of the timeline, and Zane is in it, so I feel like I have to cover it. So we start off with Zane accidentally spilling a smoothie on Emma. She rushes to hide her transformation, and Zane tries to cover for her, but he does so by being a bit of a jerk and tells Ash that he's the customer and doesn't want to have to wait around because Emma was clumsy. And then this leads to Ash kicking him out of the juice bar. Rikki then finds Zane outside and asks what's going on. He explains what happened, but does so in a way that kind of leaves out the part where he was a jerk and makes it kind of look like he was the wrongfully accused good guy. And so as you can imagine, this ends up causing a bit of a conflict between the two girls. And the timing of this isn't exactly great either, as their 1-year anniversary of becoming mermaids is coming up. So Rikki goes inside to confront Emma. This leads to the two of them getting into a bit of a fight, and it ends with both girls saying that they're not going to their anniversary party. Later, Cleo calls Emma and Rikki and gets them to come to the beach to solve things, but then Rikki brings Zane and Emma brings Ash. The boys then get into it, with Ash calling Zane pathetic and him pushing him in response. Cleo then breaks up the fight, telling them that this isn't helping and asking both of them to go. The girls then get into it again, but then Cleo is able to change the subject to their party and gets them both agree to come. Back at the juice bar, Zane enters and Ash threatens to call the cops, but then this ends up leading to Zane making a deal with him. One game of pool, if he wins, he's back, and if he loses, he'll stay away forever. And then after some convincing, Ash agrees to this. We then cut to both girls watching the game and cheering on their respective partners, but then Rikki ends up taking things even further as she then goes on to cheat to help Zane win. So maybe Zane's bad side is rubbing off a little bit more on Rikki than we thought. But she goes on to use her powers to make Ash overheat. Emma is quick to realize what's happened, and so then she uses her powers as well, but to freeze Zane's hand to his pool cue. The girls then call each other out for cheating and threaten to use their powers against each other. This then causes them to create a giant storm cloud outside and for the electricity to start going crazy. Lewis then comes in, reminding the girls of their plans with Cleo, and then they leave. We then end with the guys noticing that the girls have left. They both agree to let this disagreement go and shake hands, signaling their truce. Meanwhile, the girls do end up making it to their anniversary party. They apologize to one another and celebrate their mermaidness together. So like I said, not the most relationship-y focused episode, but it was a good one in regards to the girls' friendship. And it actually was one of my favorite episodes from this season, even though it wasn't really about Zane and Rikki. But then all of this brings us to our last episode that features the couple, which is 6 episodes later, which is kind of crazy. But to be fair, the girls have been dealing with a lot during this time. Basically, there's this new character this season called Charlotte. She was at first just Lewis's new girlfriend, but then she has since become a mermaid as well. So the girls have been trying to include her in their group, but it's been hard as she's kind of awful. But who cares about all of that, as we're only here for the ship content. So Zane finds Rikki walking on the beach and yells, "Hey stranger," at her. He then runs over saying, "Long time no see." And so I do like that they are acknowledging the fact that it's been a hot minute since we've seen Zane last. He asks if she's been busy with Mermaid Club and then says that he should have guessed. He then wraps an arm around her, asking if she can put a rest to that for today and come hang out with him instead. She tells him that she can't, and so then he pulls her closer, telling her that they can even pretend like they're in a relationship or something crazy like that. She doesn't reply, and so then he says that he'll even settle for a movie, but then she still says some other time and kisses him on the cheek before leaving.
Why don't you give that a rest for today and come hang out with me instead?
I can't.
Come on, Rikki. We could even pretend we're in a relationship or something crazy like that. I'll settle for a movie. You'll shout.
Some other day, okay?
Now, to be fair, Rikki is going through a lot right now, as I just previously explained, but at the same time, I do kind of feel bad for Zane because all he really wants to do is just spend some time with his girlfriend, and it does make me a little bit disappointed that she's able to write him off so easily. But then Rikki reaches her breaking point with Charlotte, and she decides that she can't handle being around her anymore. They were trying to plan a surprise party for Lewis, but then Charlotte kept kiboshing all of their ideas. And so then this brings Rikki back to Zane. She finds him working on his boat and asks how much longer it'll take. He asks her about Mermaid Club, and then she tells him that she has decided to take a step back from the girls. He scoffs at this, not believing her, but then she tells him that she's not kidding and reaches for his hand, helping him back onto the dock. She then tells him that he was right and that they hardly see each other, and so it's time that changed. He then asks her what happened and if they had a fight, but she lies, saying that nothing happened, and asks him why he can't just be happy that she's there. He then tells her that he is, as they lean in and share a kiss.
You were right. We hardly ever see each other, and it's about time that changed.
So what happened?
Nothing, I just decided.
Did you have an argument?
Can't you just be happy I'm here?
I am.
Now listen, I love that we're getting more content between the couple as we were just starved of it for the past 6 episodes. But at the same time, I kind of hate that she's using Zane as her second choice here. It makes it look as though she's only hanging out with Zane now because she can't hang out with her friends. And I just feel as though that's not really fair or genuine, and I just wish that Rikki had some better time management skills. And I also would have loved to see her explain to Zane what's going on and let him offer her some advice. We later see them walking on the beach together with their arms wrapped around each other. He asks her if she's having mermaid withdrawals yet, and then she scolds him for bringing it up. He then asks her if that's a yes, but then she argues that if it was a yes, then she would have said so. He then teases her, saying that she has to admit that he's better company, but then she retorts that that's debatable. They then stop and go to share another kiss, but then they're interrupted by Emma and Cleo. Zane jokes about their great timing, and Rikki hums in agreement. The girls then try to convince her to go to Lewis's party, but then she refuses as long as Charlotte is going to be there. She then goes back to Zane asking where they were, and he says kissing before giving her one on the cheek. During the party, we see them back at the beach. The two aren't exactly doing anything, and so then he asks if they should go to the party. Rikki is quick to say no, but then he tells her that she doesn't have to let Charlotte win. This grabs her attention, and so then he continues. He says that she's the one who walked away, and so now she can go back anytime she wants. And I really like this because first it shows that Rikki did explain to him what's going on, and also because it's one of the few times that we get to see Zane actually give her some solid advice. And I do like the advice that he gives her, and I feel like if he kept at it, he probably could have convinced her to go. Anyways, they then move on to the juice net, and Rikki receives a call from Ash. He tells her that he's lost the girls and asks if they're there with her. She tells him that they're not, and then shares with Zane that the girls have left. This then leaves them both confused as Zane notes that that's not like them. Meanwhile, Emma and Cleo have been trapped by Charlotte in her shed with a leaking pipe, causing them to not only be trapped, but now to also be mermaids. Ash ends up finding them and tries to let them out, but they are protesting as they don't want him finding out their secret. Rikki and Zane then show up, and they're quick to notice the water coming out from the shed. Zane is then able to usher Ash away, and Rikki is able to get in and save the girls. And then this brings us to our finale, in which lots of stuff happens, but none of it is related to Zane and Rikki. That is until the ending, where we see all of the boyfriends on the beach watching the girls run out into the ocean. And in case you were wondering, yes, of course, they were able to beat Charlotte, and she is not present in the following season. But now it is time for the season that I've been dreading talking about all along. As I said at the beginning of this video, I couldn't even get through this season as it pissed me off so much when I was watching it. It's way too different, it's boring, they ruin Zane and Rikki as well as their characters. And honestly, I wouldn't blame you if you just stopped the video right here, because season 3 just really isn't the same, and so just take this as your final warning. One positive thing about this season though is that Zane is actually in it. I believe he was only absent for 2 episodes, and I think that this is probably because he was one of the few main cast members that actually stayed for season 3. Emma's gone, Lewis is only in the first half of this season, and so Zane, Rikki, Cleo, and Nate for some reason are really the only mainstays in this season, other than Cleo's family members as well. And while that does mean that we get more content from the couple, I honestly would have preferred if they took the same route that they took in season 2 again instead. Give us a couple more episodes to further their relationship and remind us that they exist when necessary, but don't go on to make them the main focus of the show, otherwise you're just gonna run out of ideas, which is exactly what happens in my opinion, as they then turn them into this big toxic mess. But enough talk, now that we've reached season 3, let's move on to our final chapter. Now, to be fair, season 3 does begin on a pretty solid note. Things don't really take a turn until episode 5, but for me, just like the entirety of season 3 bugs me so much that I just had to include it all in this chapter. So we begin on the terrible note of Rikki's phone going off. She says that it's Zane and that she's hardly heard from him in 3 weeks, but now he apparently has a surprise for her. Cleo teases that it must be a makeup present, and then Rikki sarcastically says, "Lucky me." And I'm sorry, but the same guy who was just complaining about her hardly making any time for him now hardly made any time for her in the past 3 weeks. Like, I just find that hard to believe. Later, Zane runs up to her asking if she's ready. She asks what for, and then we cut to him covering her eyes in front of what was previously the juice net. He then surprises her by revealing that it's all under construction. She asks what this is, and then he explains that starting tonight it's his new cafe. His dad might have paid for it, but he is the manager. She then concludes that this is what he's been up to over the holidays, and he says that he thought that that somebody should do something with this place as it's been closed for ages. And now I'm confused because that's clearly the juice net. So either we've had a bit of a time jump or Zane is making a major hyperbole. She then reveals that that's what she said. She then goes inside to explore and notices a drum kit and a stage, commenting on the place featuring live music. She then gets upset as apparently this was her idea and Zane stole it. He argues that that would be really hard to prove in court, and she retorts that she shouldn't have to as he's her boyfriend. But then he ushers her over, saying that he did kind of lie before, and that this place isn't his, it's theirs. He then calls her partner as he reveals a neon sign that says Ricky's.
You stole my idea.
What? That'd be really hard to prove in court.
I shouldn't have to. You're my boyfriend.
Well, so what's yours is mine, right? Isn't that how it's supposed to work? Okay, so I did kind of lie before. It's not my place. It's ours. Partner.
So on the surface, I feel like I do really love this. Him naming a restaurant after her is absolutely adorable, and I love how he surprises her with this. And also, might I add, that Ricky's is honestly a great name for a cafe. But at the same time, it's kind of hard for me to love this when I just have so much beef associated with this cafe. I feel like it is the source of so many of their problems in this season. And then I also just feel like they are both way too young and underqualified to be running a business together. And it just makes me wonder whose bright idea this was. Whose idea was it for them to give these two kids a restaurant as their storyline? We then cut to both of them handing out flyers for opening night. Everything is hunky-dory until we later see Rikki having some doubt as she calls Cleo. She tells her that she feels as though this cafe has just been handed to her and that she didn't earn it, and that she's always been her own person, but now she feels weird about Zane being her boss. Cleo argues that they're partners and she says that she knows that, but then asks her how that's going to work. Unfortunately though, Cleo doesn't exactly help with easing any of her concerns in regards to this, as she just goes on to change the subject to what she's going to wear tonight. And to be honest, I totally understand Rikki having some reservations in regards to all of this. And I honestly would too if my partner just sprung a whole business onto me without warning. I know it was her idea, but still I feel like having an idea is much different than executing it. Nonetheless though, we do end this first episode on a positive note, as we see Cleo and Lewis show up to their grand opening and interrupt the couple who are sharing a kiss. Lewis teases, asking if that's what they call a professional attitude, and Rikki jokes that there's no harm in flirting with the boss. Zane then corrects her, saying not boss, but partner. And that is one thing that I will say about this third season. Although it does take a turn, at least in the beginning, we got nice moments like this. We then move on to episode 4, in which it's Valentine's Day, and we begin with Rikki ranting to the girls about how commercialized the holiday is and how much she doesn't like it. Bella, who is our Emma replacement, asks if that means that her and Zane don't celebrate it, and Rikki says of course not. But then later we see Rikki walk into the cafe and she's surprised to see it done up in decorations. Zane then greets her happily and she tells Bella that she thinks she's going to vomit. But Bella encourages her, saying that he's making a special effort and asking if she doesn't want Zane to notice her, and she says that she does, but not like this. She then makes her way over to him, asking what all of this is, and he explains that they're decorations for the cafe. Ricky's voice then falls in disappointment as she goes on to ask what he's doing later. He then says that they are working late as it's going to be one of the busiest days of the year. As he's leaving, he asks her if that's okay, and after he's gone, she quietly says sure to herself.
What are these?
These decorations for the cafe. Customers go crazy for this kind of thing.
Right. Customers. Commercialization? What are you doing later?
We are working late. It's going to be one of the busiest days of the year. But that's cool, isn't it? Ka-ching!
Sure.
So I could be way off base here, but I feel like this situation is a great example as to just how different Rikki is in this season. I feel like before, she was a very blunt person who was never really shy about expressing her feelings, whereas now she's for some reason holding back, and I just feel like that's nothing like the Rikki that we previously knew. And I understand that she's doing this because she didn't realize that she actually wanted Zane to make an effort until she saw him doing so and then realized that it wasn't for her. And I understand that it's hard to ask people for things that you just want them to do on their own, or I guess in Ricky's case it's hard to ask for something that you didn't realize that you wanted. But I just found Rikki in this season to be very tame and not at all like the Rikki that we saw previously. And I know that I said that I wanted Zane to be a positive influence on her and helping her control her emotions, but I feel like that's much different than this. Later at work, Zane tells Rikki that he thought that they should spend some time together. She is then happily surprised, asking where he wants to go, but then he says that he can't go anywhere as he's working 2 shifts. But But then he says that he thought that they could have some fun here. He then holds up some uninflated balloons, saying that he has to blow up as much as possible as the customers love them. Rikki is disappointed to learn that all he wants to do is blow up balloons, and then this leads her to actually blow up one of the balloons, but with her powers.
I can't go anywhere, I'm working 2 shifts, but I thought we could have some fun here. I need to blow up as many of these as possible. The customers love them.
You want me to blow up balloons?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is a bit more like the Rikki that we knew before, although she's using her actions again instead of her words, which I don't love, but at least it shows that she does still have some of that fire left inside her. We then end with Rikki finding Zane cleaning up after work. She apologizes about the balloons and he tells her that it's okay. He then says that he should have known that none of this was her style, obviously thinking that she was upset about all of the Valentine's Day decorations and not his neglect, which I guess makes sense with what he previously knows about Rikki, as she said at the beginning of this episode that she hates Valentine's Day. But then she says that she might hate Valentine's Day, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't still want to spend time with him. He tells her that he gets that, and then she says that she feels like lately they've just been cruising, taking each other for granted, whereas she wants them to be, and then he finishes her sentence agreeing with her. He then tells her that that's why he's arranged this, as he picks up a remote and turns on some music for them. The two then begin to slow dance, and she asks him what he's doing. He then teases her by saying that they're going to do something romantic and she's going to enjoy it. And then they share a kiss.
That's why I've arranged this.
What are you doing?
We're gonna do something romantic, and you're going to enjoy it.
And honestly, I think that all of this was very sweet, and I do think that this was a good way to end this episode. Honestly, whenever I think back to season 3, I'm just like, well, the Valentine's Day episode was cute at least. I somehow forget that right after this is basically when everything starts to go downhill. So now it's time for episode 5, where, like I said, things start to take a turn. We begin with Zane and Nate working on some bikes outside when Rikki comes over. She tells him that he's supposed to be working, and he retorts that he is, and then encourages her to look at his new investment. She then reminds him that their business is a cafe, and he explains that they're diversifying, as they're now going to run a bike rental. She asks him how much that's going to cost, which leads to him pulling her aside. He then explains that he paid in cash, that he got a good deal, and that this will generate enough money that they can pay themselves off, adding that she knows that he's a whiz with deals, and that she should just wait until she hears his bigger idea. But Rikki is still unconvinced, as all she does is roll her eyes and walk off. So now this is where my gripes with this business really come into play. I think it's a lot of responsibility, and I think it's too much responsibility for these two high schoolers to be dealing with. Now, I'm not exactly too sure if Zane is still in high school. He might have graduated before this season. For some reason, I have it in my head that he could be a year older, but I'm not exactly too sure why, as I feel like it's never really stated. But we know for a fact that Rikki is still in her last year, as we see her graduating later on in the season. That being said, I still just feel like they're both way too young for this. And honestly, I just don't think that their relationship needed all of this extra pressure that comes with running a business together. Anyways, Zane then goes inside the cafe and announces a motocross race, with the winning prize being $1,000. Rikki tries to interrupt him, but he doesn't pay much attention to her, going on to explain that there's a $200 entry fee. And Rikki is not impressed by this either, which I definitely understand why. If he is going to do something big with the business like this, and he claims that they're partners, then he definitely should have ran all of this by her first. Moving on, Zane finds Rikki in the office going over their accounts. He then tries to keep her in the dark, saying that all of this stuff is complicated and that she wouldn't understand it. But then she argues that she understands that they're in debt up to their ears. And then on top of that, he's giving away money for a motocross race that they don't even have. She then asks him if he's completely lost it. He argues that he's doing this so that they can make money, but then she asks how giving away $1,000 is going to make them money when they don't even have $1,000 to begin with. She then says that they should work their way out of this by doing what they do best, which is focusing on their strengths like the cafe and the band. He argues that sometimes you have to spend money to make money, and adds that he's from a business family and so he knows how this works. This causes Rikki to retort that because she's never had money, he thinks that she can't even add it up, and then he gets to his real plan as he argues that he's been riding for years and he knows everyone competing. Therefore, he is convinced that he's going to win this race. There won't be any payout, only a huge net profit as he tells her that she has to trust him on this.
Well, sometimes you have to spend money to make money. Right? I'm from a business family. I know how this works, believe me.
Oh, I get it. So because I've never had any money, you think I can't even add up?
Babe, I've been writing for years. I know everyone I'm competing against. And believe me, I'm gonna win that race, all right? There won't be a payout, only a huge net profit. You've got to trust me on this.
And once again, I feel like these are issues that these two shouldn't even be dealing with. And it also bugs me because I'm just like, why? Like, why are we wasting our time with this? I thought this show was about mermaids, not a failing cafe. It almost feels like they've aged Rikki and Zane up and turned them into like a failing marriage. Like the problems that these two are dealing with are problems that a high school relationship shouldn't even be aware of. But then in comes Will to throw a wrench in Zane's plans. So Will is another new character that we have this season, and he's mainly here to serve as Bella's love interest, but he also ends up causing some problems for the couple as well. So he comes in and Bella pays his entry fee for him. Zane takes the cash and then gestures to Rikki for her to count it. She then bites back, telling him that he can count it himself. He then comes to find out that Will actually has some experience in motocross, and then this leaves him speechless. We later see him stress to Nate about how he needs to win, and Nate tells him that he's got his back, meaning that he's going to cheat for him. Rikki later overhears Nate talking to Bella, alluding to helping Zane cheat, and so now both girls know about his plan. This leads Rikki to go to Zane, and she hints at the fact that she knows what he's planning, but he's fairly oblivious to her warning. And now I feel like a lot of people argue that one of the reasons as to why these two don't work out in this season is because they go back on Zane's character development, and I definitely agree with that later on, but as far as this episode is concerned, I'm honestly more upset about him not communicating with her than anything else. All of this cheating stuff I feel like is pretty up to par with Zane and his character. I mean, just look at the episode that we had last season near the end with him and Ash. Actually, now that I mention it, I don't think that I did cover this when we were talking about that episode, but Zane did get Nate to help him cheat back then as well. Speaking of, we then move on to race day, where Zane and Nate try to cheat, but then Bella and Rikki use their powers to create a wipeout for Nate. And in the end, Will just beats Zane for the win. He then goes on to pull Will aside and offers him free coffees from the cafe for a year in exchange for the prize money. Will then puts the pieces together and calls Zane a liar, but then Rikki comes over with the cash and gives it to Will. Zane tells her that they can't do that, but then she asks him what the alternative is. As they walk off, Zane tells Rikki that he hopes she's happy. She's made her point and now they're officially bankrupt. And I don't know, I do think that it is kind of funny that it took Zane a total of 5 episodes to run his business into the ground. But I guess that makes sense when we saw previously that his dad wasn't great at raising him to appreciate money. And maybe once again, a child should not be running a business on a whim. We then end with Zane entering the cafe that night to see it popping. Rikki then asks him if he stopped sulking now, and he says it's more of a brief pause. He then says hi to some guys he knows from the racetrack and notes to Rikki that he's never seen them there before. She then calls them a new customer base, and then he points out the bikes that she's put in the middle of the cafe, but she tells him not to get too attached as she's auctioning them off tonight. He then asks her if she thinks that they can pull through this. She explains that they'll pay off their suppliers so that they're back in business, and then they'll play to their strengths with the cafe and the band, just like she said that they should do earlier. He agrees to this, and then during the band's performance, Rikki hands him a towel, pointing him to a spill at table 3. So definitely not the best episode, and I really think that this is the beginning of everything going south, but at the same time, it's also not the worst, so do with that what you will. This brings us to episode 7, where we come to meet another new character. That is Will's older sister Sophie, and she's also come to cause some trouble for our couple. And I don't know what it is about redheads, but H2O apparently really doesn't like them. First it was Charlotte, and now it's Sophie. Like, it's almost comical. They're like, evil villain, must have red hair. Anyways, Will's sister then shows an interest in Zane, and then out comes Rikki. They share a cheek kiss, and then she tells him that they're going out for a swim. He then asks her about the staff interviews that they're doing today, but then she argues that she still has an hour and a half. He asks what if she's not back by then, but then she just tells him to deal with it, that they're just looking for someone to wait tables and not a rocket scientist.
Mate, we're just going for a swim.
Why aren't we doing the staff interviews today?
Yeah, not for an hour and a half.
What if you're not back?
Deal with it. We're looking for someone to wait tables, not a rocket scientist.
So I don't love this, and I do find Rikki's tone to be a little bit condescending here. And I know that he just did something that almost made their business go under, but still, I mean, come on, he's not completely useless. And then I also hate this because of what comes next. So Sophie then ends up getting hired by Zane after she goes to draw away all of their other applicants. Meanwhile, Rikki tells Bella that she can have the job. So then when they get back, Rikki is surprised to see somebody else already working there. Sophie introduces herself to her, and then Rikki drags Zane into the office for an urgent meeting. Rikki is immediately hostile with him, telling him to explain. He asks if she's mad that he hired Sophie, and she argues that she was supposed to do the hiring. Zane then yells back that she told him to handle it, and she says yeah, if she was late, but she wasn't. Which is not true, as we previously saw the candidates complaining about having to wait around for an hour. So either Rikki got the timing wrong or she was late. Zane then explains that Sophie was the only one who waited around after all the others left, and then Rikki is upset that he just thought that he would hire her anyway. He argues that he thought that she'd leave too and that they'd miss out, and then she tells him that Bella was interested in the job. He doesn't really take this too seriously though, and then Sophie interrupts.
I was meant to do the hiring?
Well, you told me to handle it.
Yeah, if I was late. I'm not.
She was the only one that waited around. All the others left.
They left. Why?
Let me think. I have no idea.
So you thought you could just hire her anyway?
I thought that she might leave too, that we'd miss out. What's your problem anyway?
Bella was interested in the job as well.
Right, yeah, your friend.
So I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely Team Zane on this one. She literally told him to do the interviews and said, and I quote, that it's not rocket science. I understand that she's upset for thinking that she wasn't late. I'm not really too sure what happened there, and for him not consulting her in this. But she wasn't there to be consulted, and how is he supposed to know that she wanted to give the job to Bella? I just feel like there's a lot of misplaced anger here, and I don't love it. Anyways, Sophie then interrupts and says that she can work on a trial basis. They agree to this and decide to give Bella a trial day as well. Then, as to be predicted, Sophie sabotages Bella as she puts a hot pepper in one of her smoothies. This brings her to later tell Rikki that she can give Sophie the job. The next day, Zane brings Rikki's attention to some resumes that they got from the employment agency, but then she surprises him by asking what's wrong with Sophie. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe the fact that you were freaking out yesterday over him hiring her, but Zane plays it smart as he just tells her whatever she wants and that Sophie stays. We then end with Zane and Rikki entering the cafe and sharing a kiss, as Sophie tells her brother that she's still got a plan and that this is just the beginning. So it's safe to say that Sophie is definitely giving me some major Benicio from Soy Luna vibes. We then don't get much in the following episode, but I do think that it hints at where things are going, so I'll cover the one scene that we did get. Basically, Rikki enters the office and is annoyed to see Zane playing video games instead of working. They then sit down together on the couch and he asks if they can go out tonight, just the two of them. He then moves closer, saying that they could grab some pizza and watch the sunset on the beach. Rikki says that that sounds beautiful, except he's forgetting one thing, which is that there's a full moon tonight. And if you'll recall, the full moon kind of has a wild effect on them. And also in this season, it means that there's a water tentacle after them, but that is neither here nor there. Zane then admits that he thought that they were over all of that, but she says that they're not and that they still have to be careful. He then pulls her closer, saying that in that case he'll never leave her side. She thanks him, but then says that she's booked up with the girls tonight and walks off.
We could grab some pizza, watch the sunset at the beach.
That sounds beautiful. Except you're just forgetting one small thing. Full moon?
Thought you guys were over all that.
No, we still have to be careful.
Well, I'll never leave your side.
Thanks, except I'm booked up with the girls tonight.
So this scene gives me some major flashbacks to the previous season where he was complaining about her never making any time for him. So history seems to be repeating itself, and I also think that this scene is important for later, so try to remember this one. We then have a bit of a filler with episode 11, but honestly I'll take filler over toxicity any day, and so I'm not mad at it. We start off with Rikki presenting Zane the idea of them hosting corporate functions at the cafe. He agrees that that's where the money would be, and so she decides to get working on advertising. advertising. He tells her that she's getting good at this business thing and says that he's going to put a word out through his dad's contacts. Later, Rikki tells him that a talent agency wants to book the whole cafe out. Rikki says that she's sure she'll be able to do that and he agrees, and then Rikki is surprised that he's putting it all on her. But then he tells her that he has a prior commitment as he puts on his leather jacket and his bike helmet, calling it a business thing. Rikki isn't convinced, asking him why his bike's out front, and then he says that there's a bike rally involved, but that he'll be using the event to promote their new venture to corporate honchos. She sarcastically asks if there's a lot of those at bike rallies, and he says a few. She then notes that he's left her to handle everything, even giving Sophie the day off. He agrees, but then says that he's sure that she'll find someone to help her out. So obviously I don't love this. Hosting an event is a lot of extra work, and it's really not cool of him to leave her completely alone with everything. Especially because they make it sound like she just found out about this event that he booked today, which definitely makes it worse knowing that he planned this whole thing on a day that he knew he wasn't going to be available and then gave their only other employee that they have the day off. Rikki then gets Cleo to help her out with the event, but then the talent agency ends up being for kids, and they all come in full of beans and causing chaos. At one point, Rikki even has to dress up as a clown because Zane assured the talent agency that there would be one. Afterwards, Zane comes in and apologizes for not getting back sooner, but he says that he really kicked some goals in for them at the bike rally and says that they're going to have bookings coming out of their ears. Rikki asks if it's going to be for anyone over the age of 6 this time, and Zane is shocked to see the mess. The following day, Zane tells them that it looks like they did well yesterday and jokes that he's going to have to go away more often. She then tells him that she wants full details of the bookings next time, but then he argues that the important thing was that the event was a success. He then tells her that he has another booking for today and that they've specifically asked for Rico the clown. She then teases back that it's unfortunately Rico's day off, but they do have a stand-in as she puts a clown nose on him, calling him Zano. And then later the girls come back to Zano the clown being attacked by children. So it is nice to see that Rikki did get some comeuppance in the end. And like I said, this isn't exactly the best episode and it definitely gives us some more ammunition on Zane. But as far as filler episodes go, this one isn't awful. And then we have a bit of a wild episode next. But honestly, this was the one episode from this season where I feel like they were actually able to match the drama from the previous ones. And so I feel like if I had to rank the episodes from this season, this one would actually be fairly high up. Unfortunately, there wasn't exactly much ship content in it though, so I'll just cover what was included. So we start off with Zane and Rikki silently working in the office. He then asks her if it's alright if he goes out for a while to visit with an old friend. She then makes a point to ask that he's not planning any surprises as he knows what today is. He responds that it's the 12th and then asks how he could have forgotten. But then he goes on to say that he has bills that should have been paid by the 10th. He apologizes, saying that he knows how angry their fruit supplier gets, but he tells her not to worry about it as he'll smooth things out. So if you couldn't tell by that already, today is of course Rikki's birthday. And don't worry, Zane hasn't forgotten, but instead they're planning a surprise party for her at the moon pool. So then we see the rest of the gang come in and they all discuss their plans. Meanwhile, Rikki finds some counterfeit bills in the till, and then this brings her to the house that placed the order. She then ends up getting kidnapped and held hostage in their boathouse, as apparently she just walked in on a crime scene. Eventually, Cleo, Bella, and Will come to her rescue, which was great, but I was also kind of sad to see that it wasn't Zane, as that would have made for some great ship content, and we have seen in the past that they are pretty good at saving one another. I then have in my notes that they then take their friend who was just kidnapped and held hostage to her surprise party. Yay, no trauma in sight. Also, there's no mention whatsoever of Rikki needing to talk to the police or give a statement or anything. It's like, no, let's just bring her to her surprise party. It's her birthday, everything's fine. This isn't her first time being kidnapped. But Zane then arrives at her party and asks what Will is doing there, as he's not supposed to know about their secret. And then Cleo explains that he saved Rikki's life while he couldn't be contacted. Zane asks if she was in trouble, and Bella says that it's a long story, but that they can trust Will. He then wishes Rikki a happy birthday and hands her her gift. He then tells her that he knows that she already has one, and then Rikki opens the gift, revealing a new phone. She then smiles at him, telling him that a phone is exactly what she needed. Which is true, as hers was just destroyed by her kidnappers. She then goes on to kiss him on the cheek and thank him.
You've been in trouble.
Long story, but we can trust him.
And he knows everything.
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 Happy... whatever. I know you've already got one of these, but...
A phone is exactly what I needed.
And can I just say that they move on so casually from the fact that his girlfriend was just kidnapped? Like, you'd think that they would fill Zane in on what just happened, but apparently not. And he moves on so quickly as well. Like, Cleo mentions that Will saved her life, and then he's just like, all right, here's your birthday present. Which, speaking of, talk about a horrible way to spend your birthday. I really feel for Rikki on this one. And then also, how on earth did Zane know to get her a new phone? Was it a newer one at least? Like, was it a better model? Or did Zane just have some sort of weird sixth sense and that he knew that she would need a new phone? We may never know. But now we have reached episode 14, in which we have another not so great Zane episode. Surprise, surprise. And by not so great, I mean probably the worst one from the entire series. So we start off with seeing Zane and Will going swimming with the girls, and Zane is clearly having a hard time keeping up with Will. Later, we see Zane and Rikki at the pier, and she asks him why they had to ditch the others, and he makes the excuse that he hardly gets her to himself these days, especially not with Will hanging around. She then argues that he likes swimming with them and asks what's wrong with that, and then he tells her that it's a serious secret and asks how serious he takes it. She then teases him, asking if this has anything to do with Will being a better diver than him, and then she tells him that he doesn't always have to be so competitive, and she asks that he give Will a chance. So even though we just saw Rikki telling Zane to relax, he then goes on to do the complete opposite, as he decides that he needs to teach Will a lesson. So he offers to become his diving sponsor, and then they head out onto the water so that Will can show him what he's got. Will does his first dive of 30 meters, and then Zane decides to dive down himself to prove his superiority, even though he's never dived before in his life. But I guess that doesn't really matter, as he's just going to cheat anyway. So then once he's down there, he has Nate provide him with some oxygen, and so that he can dive even deeper than Will. And then this leads to afterwards, where Will feels the need to prove himself, and then he decides to dive down 60 meters without preparation. But then of course, once he gets down there, he ends up passing out. This then brings Zane to call Rikki to come and save him. So then Rikki comes, and hang with me here, she then kisses him underwater. Don't ask me why, as it's never explained, but I can only assume it was some like magical mermaid kiss of life, because then he wakes up and she brings him to the surface. And now this is when we start to have a bit of a shift, as Will and Rikki's bond begins to grow and Zane starts to feel threatened. And I know that there are some Rikki and Will shippers out there, but I honestly really liked them as friends. I thought that they had a really healthy and endearing friendship, and I personally never really saw it as anything romantic, but to each their own. Back at the cafe, Rikki is very upset with Zane for almost killing her friend. She asks him if he's insane and emphasizes the fact that he could have drowned. Zane says that he knows that and agrees that it was a stupid thing to do. But Rikki doesn't think that it was stupid, she thinks that his idiot ego is to blame, and that he just had to prove that he was better than him. Zane argues that he didn't have to take him up on the offer, and then Rikki gets upset with him for trying to put all of this onto Will. He argues that he's not, and that he didn't mean for it all to turn out like this, and then she says that he never does before going to leave. She then tells him that she's going to see Will alone, and then he softens his voice, telling her that he knows that he messed up, but then asks if they're still okay. She retorts that right now all she's interested in is making sure that Will's okay, and then she leaves.
Where are you going?
To see Will alone.
Rikki, okay, I know I messed up, but we're okay, aren't we?
Right now I'm more interested in seeing if Will's okay.
And yeah, honestly, I feel like all of this is pretty fair on Rikki's part. Zane definitely took things way too far this time, and I don't think that Rikki is overreacting whatsoever. And she really was spot on with blaming his ego for all of this, which again is unfortunate because I hoped that Rikki could have been a better influence on him, but instead they chose not to take that route. And then unfortunately, we also don't see a resolution for this conflict between the couple, other than Rikki telling Will that Zane okayed the sponsorship and that she argued an extra 50% on his behalf. So I assume that there was an apology and a conversation that was had, we just didn't get to see it. Moving on to the next episode where there isn't much, but I did just want to shout out the moment where Zane and Rikki fire Sophie together. She just behaves really terribly in this episode and they're finally able to call her out for it, and it's great. It wasn't exactly a romantic one, but it was still a good moment nonetheless. But now it is time for episode 16, in which Zane is awful once again. We start off with Rikki going to Zane for help in keeping them safe during the full moon. He then teases her, saying that he never thought that he would see the day in which she was asking him for help, and then she tells him not to push it. He then begins to rub her shoulders, telling her that it's about time that she let him help her, and then she retorts that he's never offered. He says that that's not true, but then she says that he's always too busy hanging out with the guys. She asks if he has plans tonight, but then he says that it's nothing that he can't work around. She argues that you can't really work around a full moon, and then he caves. He tells her that if it means this much to her, then he'll cancel his plans for tonight to help her set up the cafe. Nate then interrupts, and we do see him cancel his plans. And now this scene just left me a little bit confused, because last we saw Zane was offering his help, but then it was Rikki that declined it. And so all of this stuff about him always being too busy hanging out with his friends, I feel like it's kind of coming out of nowhere, and they're really just using that to set up the plot line for this episode. Moving on to the full moon, Will comes into the cafe and Zane tells him that they're closed. He then explains to him that the girls actually invited him there to help. Rikki then comes out and Will offers his boat shed instead for them to stay in. Zane then gets threatened by this, and then Rikki has to break up a fight between the two of them by saying that they're going to stay here and they're all going to get along. But Zane is now triggered, and so later when Nate and his friends show up and Will asks them to leave, Zane says otherwise. Will argues that Rikki isn't going to like this, but he says that she's his girlfriend and so he can deal with it. Rikki then comes in confused, asking what he's doing. Zane asks if it's not obvious, and then Nate chimes in saying that they're going to play some cards. Rikki then tells Zane that they've been through this and that she needs the cafe for tonight, and so he tells her that she can take the office and they'll take the cafe and everyone will stay out of everyone's way. This then leads Rikki to ask to speak with Zane in private.
But you said,
Yeah, I know what I said.
we've been through this and I need the cafe tonight.
So you take the office, we'll take the cafe, everyone will stay out of everyone's way and it'll all be fine.
We won't interrupt your pajama party, right, guys?
Can I have a word with you in private?
Yes.
So not really related, but I do feel like I have to shout out the way that Zane says yes to Rikki, because I don't know why he delivered his line like that, but it just made me laugh. And I know that he has just been triggered by Will's presence or whatever, and so he's trying to fight back in this weird way. But it's just so unfortunate because this was his one chance to prove to Rikki that she can still depend on him. And the fact that he responded by doing all of this just makes me mad. And I was going to say that I think Rikki has to take some of the blame here as well, because from my understanding, at this point Zane didn't know about the water tentacle, as we never saw them discuss the severity of it. But then she goes on to bring it up in their following conversation, and so I guess they have talked about it. And so in that case, I don't think Rikki does deserve any of the blame. This one is all on Zane, in my opinion. So once they're in the office, Rikki asks him how he could do this to her, but then he asks her why everything always has to be about her. She argues that every now and then during a full moon, she just needs him to be a little bit more understanding, but then he just asks why every time he thinks that she's got this mermaid thing under control, there's always some big drama. And now this I just also feel like is very out of character for him. I feel like Zane has always been super supportive and understanding of her mermaid side. I mean, just look at the first season finale. And I know that he has been triggered, but I still feel like this is all kind of coming out of nowhere. Anyways, she is then able to get to the root of the problem, asking if this is about Will. She takes his silence as confirmation and then tells him that she can't believe that he's jealous. He argues that he's not and that he just doesn't understand why she needs Will more than she needs him. Instead of denying this though, Rikki just tells him that it's because he's actually willing to put them first. Zane argues that he is too, and then they are interrupted by Will.
Is it Will? I can't believe this, you're jealous.
No, I'm not jealous. Okay, I don't get why you need him more than you need me.
Because he's actually willing to put us first.
So am I.
So this sucks, and it's like, theoretically, I'm just like, a jealous Zane sounds great, but they are just not executing it well whatsoever. I hate this side that it's bringing out in him, and I just feel like they've forgotten everything about his character and who he is. Like, Zane was a mermaid hunter, he was interested in mermaids. Why on earth would he be like anti-mermaid now? Like, I just feel like that makes no sense. Anyways, Will then asks if everything is okay, and Zane tells him that he's not welcome here and wants him to leave. Rikki then retorts that in that that case, she's leaving too, telling Zane that this is why she's never asked him for help. Will then goes to say something, but she tells him not to and says that she can do this without either of them. Will then finds Rikki at the docks. He tries to encourage her not to go to the moon pool, telling her that Zane doesn't understand as he hasn't seen the water tentacle firsthand, whereas he has. He then tries to encourage her to come back to his shed for the night so that he can protect her, but then this just upsets her further as she doesn't feel like she needs to be protected, and then she storms off. Back at the cafe, Cleo is able to knock some sense into Zane, and then she gets him to cancel his party and help out her and Rikki. And it's actually a really great moment, and it's probably my favorite from the episode. Meanwhile, we see Rikki go to the moon pool, and she ends up becoming face to face with the water tentacle thing. She speaks to it and is able to stop it from attacking Will, but then when Bella arrives, she lies and says that Will was the one who saved her. Back at the cafe, Zane asks if she's okay and what happened. Bella explains and says that Will got there just in time. This of course upsets Zane, and then the two go on to get into a fight that Bella has to break up. Zane then rushes over to Rikki. He takes her hand and promises her that that will never happen again. That from now on, he'll be there for her. All she says in response to this is okay, and then Cleo gets upset, asking if she's just going to forgive him like that. But she doesn't respond to this and instead just says that she's going to get her stuff and go home.
Hey. It'll never happen again, I promise. I'll be here for you from now on.
Okay. No, you're not just gonna forgive him like that, are you? I think I'm just gonna get my stuff and go home.
So clearly Rikki is in a bit of a daze from what she just experienced, and I also have a hard time believing Zane when he says that he's going to be there for her from now on, because as far as I'm concerned, I do not trust season 3 Zane. But I do love just how pressed Cleo was about him and his actions, and honestly it's kind of funny that now that Lewis is gone, she gets to be our voice of reason. So Zane and Rikki are pretty much on a downward spiral now, and I feel like it's safe to say that there's just no saving them at this point. And there isn't much in the following episode, but there is this one conversation that I think proves this. Basically, Rikki enters the cafe and Zane greets her. He tells her that he's hardly seen her lately and she says that she's been busy. He then asks doing what, as she's never there and she's never at home. She then tells him that if he must know, then she's been at the moon pool. This then leads him to pull her aside and ask her if she's been there all day, and she says yes. And then this causes him to ask her what's so special about the moon pool all of a sudden. She tells him that he wouldn't understand, but says that ever since the last full moon, she's felt really connected to it. He then scoffs at this, asking if she's becoming a full-time fish. She then gets upset with him, telling him that this isn't a joke and that for a second there, she actually thought that he cared. Rikki then goes to leave, but he follows her. He then tells her that he doesn't know what's been going on with her lately, but she's changed. She doesn't respond to this though, and instead she just rolls her eyes before leaving.
You know, for a second there, I actually thought you cared. How could I be so wrong?
Rikki.
Forget about it.
Look, I don't know what's going on with you lately. You've changed. I don't know how exactly, but you've definitely changed.
So this conversation in particular really frustrated me because I feel like Rikki makes it very obvious that she's going through something, and I feel like this should have been a wake-up call for Zane. She literally just confessed to him that she's been so obsessed with the moon pool that she's been there all day and all night, and instead of taking this seriously, he just makes fun of her and calls her a full-time fish. And I know that we aren't getting the full picture in this summary format, and that there has been a change in Rikki ever since she confronted the water tentacle thingy. She's become really distant, especially in regards to her friends, which I don't love. But then I also feel like it's super hypocritical of Zane to point this out when he has too. And so for him to immediately pull out the "you've changed" accusation just really bugged me. But moving on to our next episode where the arguments continue. First of all, Rikki finds Zane in his office and he tells her that she's just in time for her shift, but then she tells him that something's come up. He asks if she's off to Mako and she tells him that she knows she hasn't been around much lately, but claims that there's a good reason for that. He then joins her on the couch and says that he knows, calling it secret mermaid business, but then she argues that it's serious and that she could use his help. He groans at this and then she begs, saying that he was the only one she could ask. He then asks her about the others and she tells him that they're not around at the moment. conveniently leaving out the fight that they just got into because of her keeping things from them. She then continues to beg, asking him to come to Mako with her and saying that she'll explain everything on the way. He asks if she means right now and she says yes, and so this causes him to ask what's so urgent out there. She says that she can't get into it right now, but that he just needs to trust her. But then he tells her that he has a meeting in 15 minutes that he can't just put off for some mermaid drama. She argues that it's important, but he says that his meeting is too. And so once again, Rikki is only going to Zane after she's now ostracized herself from her friends, which is really annoying, and I hate how she keeps doing that. And it's also frustrating how Zane was previously begging to help her, and now when she does come to him, this is how he reacts. And also, once again, the guy who was previously all about mermaids now couldn't care less. And I just wanted to say that I would totally accept his excuse of being busy with work, that is if his meeting was actually legit. But as we soon come to see, it's not, and it is definitely something that could have easily been rescheduled, especially for something as important as Rikki is making this all out to be. So this is then proven as they step outside and Sophie is waiting for him. Rikki is upset to learn that this is his meeting he was referring to, and he tells her that he can explain. He says that he's still sponsoring Will and that they're just meeting to update the terms of their deal. Sophie says that it's nothing and Zane says that it's just business. Rikki asks what kind of business and then he pulls her aside. He then asks her what her problem is and she argues that he doesn't even like Will. He then says that it's got nothing to do with like and that it's just, and she finishes his sentence calling it business. She then tells him not to let her stop him then, and then she leaves. First of all, I completely understand why Rikki is upset, as like I said, this meeting is something that could have easily been rescheduled. And I would say that I was confused to find out that she was surprised that he was still sponsoring Will when I thought that she was like the catalyst of all of that, but we later come to find out that she thought that he stopped sponsoring Will after they fired her. So that makes more sense to me, and also I understand that she's mainly just upset here because now she thinks that there's something more going on between Zane and Sophie. So once outside, she asks him how long this has been going on for. He explains that he kept the sponsorship going after they fired her and that he would have told her, but he knew how she'd react. She then asks if these meetings have just been going on behind her back this whole time and then calls him unbelievable. But then he asks her what she expects, as she's never there, and then when she is, all she does is talk about mermaid stuff. She yells back for him not to act like she doesn't try to include him, and he says that she doesn't, which is not true as we literally just saw, and Rikki points this out as she says that she practically begged him to help her, but he told her that he had a meeting. She says that he could have told her that it was with Sophie, but he didn't, almost like it's some big secret, and then she asks him why that is. He then tries to turn things on her, as he does so well, and then says that she's one to talk, adding that sometimes he thinks that she's using the whole Mako thing as an excuse for her to see Will. Rikki has had enough after this accusation, and so she begins to walk off, but he continues saying that she sees more of Will than she does of him. She argues that that's because he gets it, and then Zane says that he doesn't, and that he doesn't understand why this whole mermaid thing is so important to her. He then says that he just wants to be with the real her, and she says that this is the real her before leaving.
Well, I don't. Okay, I don't get it. I don't understand why this whole mermaid thing is just so important to you. I just want to be with the real you.
This is the real me.
So now I feel like I'm starting to understand where Zane is coming from with all of this mermaid stuff. Because he used to get it, he used to be super understanding about her mermaid side. But now it's like this mermaid side of her, which used to only be this one part of her, has now become all of her. And there is something endearing about Zane just wanting to be with the Rikki that he knows and loves. But at the same time, Rikki is clearly going through something right now, and what he should be doing is being there to support her, whether that's human related or mermaid related. And on that note, it is time for our next episode, which also includes their breakup, which at this point definitely seems like the right decision, as I don't even know who either of these people are anymore, and I also don't see any other resolution to these conflicts. So we begin with the cafe preparing for the upcoming diving competition. Zane tells Rikki that they should mark off spots to stand so that they can show off too. She tells him that she'll leave the showing off to him, but then he tells her that he always looks better when she's standing next to him. But clearly Rikki is not over their previous fight, as she just rolls her eyes and walks off. off. And I'm really glad that she does this because I kind of hate how he's just pretending like nothing happened. He then goes after her, telling her that they've been planning this for ages and asking her to enjoy it. But then she retorts that he means that he's been planning this with Sophie for ages. And instead of acknowledging this comment, Zane just chalks it up to her being in a mood. Rikki's friends then come in and she tells them that it's really hard being around Zane, but says that it's Will's big day and that she wants to be there to support him. Bella then excuses her, telling her that she can explain things to him and that he'll understand. She thanks her for this, and then her and Cleo leave. Zane then asks Bella where Rikki is, and she tells him that she needed to get away for a while. He asks what from, and she says you. And then this brings us to our big diving competition. Will wins and breaks a previous record, and then Sophie kisses Zane in celebration. Rikki does see this as the girls are watching the competition, but from a bit farther away as they're in mermaid form. And I won't include the scene because I don't think anybody wants to see that, but I will say that I think that kiss lasted for way too long. And I also loved Zane's facial reaction afterwards, where he's just like so confused as to what just happened and how he immediately wipes his mouth. But with that being said, it is now time for their breakup. So Zane goes into the office and Rikki is there waiting for him. She asks if it was a good day and he pauses, surprised to see her, before telling her that it was. He then says that this has been huge for them and that she should have been there. She then reveals to him that she was and adds that him and Sophie looked very pleased with each other. He then looks around briefly before saying that they got a bit carried away celebrating, but that's it. And then she reminds him who he's talking to and says that she knows what she saw. He argues that it's nothing to get upset about. She agrees that it's not, as she's known for a while now. He asks her if it's over and she tells him that she thought that he'd moved on from being immature and selfish, but apparently he hasn't. He then argues that the problem is that she's changed, but then he says it in the most like whiny voice possible and it just bugs me. And she agrees that she has and says that she's not going to put up with it anymore. She then says goodbye to him and leaves as he continues calling after her.
I've known that we were over for a while.
Over.
I thought you'd moved on from being immature and selfish, but you haven't.
Well, maybe the problem is you've changed.
Oh, I have. I'm not going to put up with it anymore.
Rikki.
Bye, Zane.
Rikki.
So that is it. That is how our Rikki and Zane love story comes to an end. And I don't really have that many thoughts to share on the breakup because I do think that it was a long time coming. And I'm honestly kind of glad that Sophie kissed him, as it's what made Rikki finally pull the trigger. Which is kind of funny because I feel like season 1 Rikki would have probably pulled the trigger and broken up with him like 3 episodes ago. But I guess Zane is right in that she has changed. And while you may be thinking that that's it, as the couple has now broken up, that's actually far from the truth, as we still have like another 6 episodes to go. And if you thought that things were bad before their breakup, just get ready because I feel like it's just about to get worse. So in the following episode, we see that Rikki is quite pleased with their breakup. The girls are all hanging out and Bella apologizes to her for going on about her and Will after what just happened between her and Zane. But then Rikki tells her that there's nothing to apologize for, that her and Zane have gone their separate ways and that it's fine. Cleo then argues that nobody describes a breakup as fine, but then Rikki asks her why she wouldn't be. She's got no cafe or staff to worry about and then calls herself a brand new mermaid, which honestly I love for her. This breakup doesn't mean that she's free now only from Zane, but also from their whole business and all of the pressure that comes with it. And not just any business, it was a business that was snuck onto her, so this freedom must feel nice. Zane, on the other hand, is swamped at the cafe, and so then he ends up hiring Sophie back as the new manager. The girls later complain to Rikki about this, but she is unfazed, saying that Zane can hire whoever he wants and that she'll just stay clear of there. And then the rest of the episode includes Rikki avoiding the cafe until the very end, where she shows up in a hot red dress. Which, speaking of, this reminds me of just how different Rikki's wardrobe is in this season. In the previous seasons, she was always wearing red and black, whereas now she's taken on Emma's wardrobe for some reason and is always wearing blue and white. And I assume that this was done to like signal a change in her character, but I don't like it. But like I said, Rikki comes in this dress and Zane stops and stares. Sophie then asks what she's doing there and tells Zane to kick her out, but he says no and tells her to leave her alone. Then we have episode 21, where Will gives Rikki a necklace as a thank you for saving his life. Later, Zane finds Rikki on the beach and tells her that he's been looking for her. He says that he wants to talk, but she tells him to leave it alone and that it's over. He then notices her necklace and she says that she got it from a friend. He asks what kind of friend, and then Bella steps in, telling him that it's none of his business. The girls then leave the two of them alone and Zane concludes that it's a guy friend, adding that that he can guess who. She tells him that he's making a fool out of himself, but then he continues, referencing Will. She then says that she's moving on and so should he, but then he yells back that he's moved on too and that he just needs her to tell him his name. Rikki doesn't answer him and instead just walks away, which is probably a wise decision.
So it's a guy friend, but I can guess who.
You're making a fool out of yourself.
He's like this tall, into diving.
What are you doing? I'm moving on, so should you.
Yeah, I've moved on too, so just tell me his name.
And honestly, at this point, I just hate what this show has become. I hate having to watch pathetic Zane. It feels like almost dehumanizing. And I just can't help but go back to wishing that he wasn't a main character in this season. Or that after they broke up, that they could have at least given him the decency of just disappearing. Because I honestly think that that would have been better than this. Anyways, Zane then finds Sophie in the office. She then notices that he's tense because she's like giving him a massage for some reason. It's honestly quite comical how hard she tries with Zane at the end of the series and how often he's just shutting her down. But of course he then tells her that it's Rikki. He then tries to fish some information out of her by asking what she knows about Will and Rikki. She says that as far as she knows, they're just friends. And then this brings Sophie to later ask Will about Rikki. He confirms that they're just friends, but then Sophie goes and tells Zane the exact opposite. And then this leads Zane to break into Will's shed. He's quick to find Rikki's necklace and steals it. Will later realizes that it's been stolen and Rikki is quick to figure out that it must have been Zane. This then brings her back to the cafe to confront him. She asks him to give it back and he notes that she figured that out quickly. She warns him, but then he says that he's not giving it back until she tells him what's going on between her and Will. She yells back that nothing is going on, and then Zane argues that he could have just given her a necklace if that was what she wanted. He then asks what happened to them and Rikki reminds him that he's forgetting about all of the bad stuff. He asks if that's such a bad thing and Rikki says that it is, that he's ruined everything, and she tells him to deal with it. But instead, Zane says that he knows that he's made some mistakes but asks if there's still a chance for them, adding that he can't just stop his feelings for her and that he knows that she feels the same way. Instead of agreeing with him though, Rikki just stares back at him.
I know I made some mistakes, but there's still a chance for us, isn't there? If we just got back together, things would work out, I know it. I can't just stop my feelings for you. And I know that you feel the same way too, don't you?
And once again, I feel like this pathetic Zane begging Rikki to take him back thing is starting to get old. And not to mention, they've also now just like fully gone back on his character development. Zane is now the villain again, and there is no turning back now. But unfortunately, the scene isn't over yet. So he tells her to think of everything they've been through together, and says that he's always been there for her and her friends. Which isn't true, but alright, Zane. He then says that this place was supposed to be their thing, and that it's not the same without her. She then asks him what about Sophie, as he seemed to set her up quite nicely, but then he brushes this off by saying that she works here and that's it. Rikki doesn't believe this though, telling him that she's into him. She then asks that he look her in the eye and tell her that he doesn't feel the same way. He does this easily, but then she tells him that she can't trust him anymore. He then yells back that he didn't do anything, but then she reminds him that he kissed her. He claims once again that it was nothing, but she retorts that she saw them and that it wasn't nothing. Once again, Zane then tries to flip everything on her, saying that she doesn't want to believe him and that she's making up excuses so that she can be with someone else. She tells him that that's ridiculous, and then he asks that they go out, that they go get something to eat, and then he'll give her the necklace back after, which is a crazy request, which of course she says no to. He then asks if she wants him to leave her alone, to which she says yes. And then this is where things get even worse, which you might not have thought was even possible, but it is. Zane then says that if this is the end, then he doesn't owe her anything. She then retorts that she doesn't want anything from him, but then he says that if they're apart, then he can't guarantee that he can keep her secret. She is shocked by this, but he doubles down, saying that if she wants him to be loyal to her, then all he's asking is for the same in return. She orders him to give her the necklace back. He asks what's so special about it as he throws it on the table, and then Sophie interrupts.
I don't want anything from you.
Really? Because if we're apart, I can't guarantee I'll keep your secret.
What?
You heard me.
I never thought you'd sink that low.
You want me to be loyal to you. All I'm asking for is the same in return.
Give me the necklace.
What is so special about it?
So it's exactly what I said. Zane is now the villain once again. And it's like the whole message of their relationship now is just completely lost. Because now it's just like the girls were right all along and that she never should have trusted him. And I'm sorry, but I just genuinely don't believe that the Zane that I know would ever say this. It honestly reminds me of Hannah Montana when Miley was worried that Jake would do the same thing to her. And then he was genuinely hurt that she would even think that. And that's Jake Ryan we're talking about. Like, that guy sucks, but apparently less than Zane. I kept waiting for like a psych moment, like no matter what happens, I would never sink that low, but it never came. This boy is literally using her secret against her so that she'll get back together with him, and I just feel like that is unforgivable. And also, I'm just so sick of this. Like, this argument went on for way too long. I feel like I checked out at numerous parts throughout it, and I'm just like, they already broke up, so why are we sitting here beating this dead horse? But anyways, Cleo and Bella then use their crystals to cut the power out, and then Rikki is able to snatch the necklace off of the table before she leaves. Zane runs after her, but she's already gone, and then we end with Rikki meeting Zane on the beach. She's worried, asking if he told Sophie that they're mermaids, but he says no. She then goes to leave, but he yells at her to wait. He apologizes, admitting that he said some pretty stupid things last night. He claims that he just lost his head, but tells her that he'll make it up to her one day. She then tells him that she can't do this anymore, but says that she needs to know if they can trust him from now on. He says of course, but then goes back to their relationship again, saying that he just can't forget all of the good times that they had together. She says that she can't either, but she also says again that she can't forget all of the bad stuff. So until then, he's lucky that she's even speaking to him.
But I can never forget all the good times we had. I mean, can you?
No. But I also can't forget all the bad stuff either. So until then, you're lucky I'm speaking to you, alright?
So this scene is kind of mind-boggling to me, because although Zane is apologizing, I feel like he's not apologizing to the extent that is needed for what was said. I also just feel like Rikki is 100% correct in everything that she says here, and I absolutely love the note that she ends on. And then we have the following episode in which there is another full moon, and this is also when we find out more about the water tentacle. And we also have Sophie asking Zane out, to which he kind of says yes. But then he ends up getting worried about Rikki, and then he stands Sophie up so that he can go to the moon pool to check on her. So him and Will both go, and they enter at somewhat of a climactic moment, as the water tentacle was in the middle of showing them an image of a comet headed for Earth. Rikki gets upset with Zane for coming, and so then he storms out, saying that he thought that he was doing the right thing. The girls then discuss what they saw, unsure as to if it was something that was going to happen or already has happened. And don't ask me how water was able to magically project something onto the wall, as this show has just gone completely bonkers at this point. But enough about their maybe impending doom, as now it's time for a beach party. Yay! So in episode 23, Zane finds Rikki and asks what time he should pick her up, and I think I want to die, actually. I wish this was over. She looks back at him confused, and he explains for the beach party that she's going to let him take her to. She asks why on earth she would let him do that, and then he changes tactics, saying that he wants them to be friends. She doesn't believe him, and so then he says instead that they were together throughout most of her last years of school, and so he thinks that there's something right about them going together. Rikki still doesn't agree, and so then he argues that she can't go by herself. She asks him who said that she is, and then he gets it into his head that she's going with someone. He asks her who it is, and she tells him that it's none of his business before walking off.
Well, we were together for most of your last years of school, so I think there's something right about us being together for this.
I don't.
You can't go by yourself.
He says I am.
What, you going with someone?
It's actually none of your business.
And before we move on, I just wanted to point out the fact that Zane tries, like, what? 4 tactics to get Rikki to go with him? Like, this guy needs to calm down and seriously take a hint. I honestly hate this version of Zane. He is so annoying. Back at the cafe, Zane tells Sophie that Rikki is taking a date to the party and that he bets it's her brother. Sophie says that that's good, and then asks him what he thinks about changing the name of the cafe to Zane's. But luckily, Zane isn't having it. He then continues to go on about Rikki, saying that maybe she's just going with him to make him jealous. He then says that he knows Rikki, that she'll make him chase after her for a while until she'll finally give in and go with him. And I'm like, yeah, maybe that worked back in the beginning when you two were still kind of getting to know each other. But a few years later, and after all of this stuff that he's pulled, like, I don't think so. I think that he should maybe, God forbid, just do as she says and back off. Meanwhile, Will practices asking out Bella to the party on Rikki, and then she of course overhears this. This leads to her asking Nate to go with her in front of him, and then to Will actually asking Rikki to go with him, but as friends. Sophie then tells Zane about this, and she encourages him once again to move on. She then says that the first step towards doing so is by removing her name from the cafe. Zane doesn't really engage in this conversation, but she takes this as a yes anyways. At the party, Rikki and Will kind of dance together, and then Zane comes over and asks Will what he's doing with Rikki. He then gets upset with her for saying that there was nothing going on between them. She then yells back that nothing is going on, not that that's any of his business. He then goes on to push Will, and this causes Rikki to have to get in between the two of them. Will asks what this is all about, and Zane says the two of them, and this leads Will to exclaim that he's not interested in Rikki, he's interested in Bella. Bella then comes over after overhearing this, but then she gets water spilled on her, and then the two of them leave. Rikki then asks Zane if he could have made a bigger fool out of himself. We then end the episode with Sophie taking down the Ricky's sign, and then Zane comes in and gets upset with her. Firstly, for making him think that Will was interested in Rikki, and then secondly, for trying to change the name of his cafe. He says that it's called Ricky's and that even if she's moved on, the cafe hasn't. He then orders her to put the sign back up. And this is one thing that I did love about end of series Zane, which is his complete uninterest in Sophie and adamancy about the name of his cafe. We then don't get much in the following episode other than this one scene between Zane and Will, where he inadvertently blames their breakup on Rikki for her always needing to be the center of attention, which I personally feel like is a little bit of a projection. Honestly, I'm starting to feel like the end of the series is just us watching Zane crash out. But now it is finally time to talk about our finale. So we begin with Rikki seeing Zane on the beach. She goes to walk right past him without saying anything. He calls her out for this, but then she asks him why she should. He then admits that he probably deserved that and then tells her to go for it, pointing to his face and telling her to take her best shot. She says no and that he's too easy of a target at the moment. She then continues her teasing until he tells her that the cafe is going under. She doesn't believe him at first, but then he says that at this rate they'll have to close doors by the end of the week. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just find it so funny just how quickly Zane is able to run the business back into the ground now that Ricky's gone. Like, this guy really couldn't run a cafe for the life of him. She then asks even after all of the work that they did, and he says yes and that it's not the same without her. She tells him to ask his dad for the money. He says that he did, but this was his last chance and that he's blown it, which is funny because as he says, that's exactly what she said to him. And I just have to say that I find this so depressing that we're starting out the finale this way. Like, this is the grand story arc that we've given these two, which is absolutely nothing. They've just completely ruined Zane's character and made him lose everything that he's worked for, and it just makes me wonder what the point of any of this was. But then it gets even worse as Sophie and this other guy, Ryan, convince Zane to extract some crystals that are in the walls of the moon pool. He then goes with them to do this, and he does look around concerned about the girls coming in, but that's about it. They then extract some of the crystals and find out that the cave is loaded with them. So I'm sure you can imagine as to where they're going with this. Meanwhile, the girls come to find out that that comet from earlier is actually headed for Earth. And again, I don't exactly understand what is going on, and I find all of this to be very silly. Moving on to part 2, the evil duo tells Zane about their plans to go back to the moon pool and extract more crystals. But this time he has somewhat of a conscience as he goes to Rikki and tells her about what they're planning. She is shocked to learn about what they've done and that they're going to do more. He tells her that he tried to stop them, and then she gets upset with him for acting like he had nothing to do with this. He apologizes, saying that the cafe was going under and that he thought this would fix things, but then she just tells him that he never should have messed with Mako, that it's powerful and even more powerful than either of them ever thought. She then goes to leave, but he yells for her to wait, and he tells her that he wants to help. No matter what it is, he's there. But she says no and that it's their place and that it's up to them.
Rikki, wait. I want to help you. Whatever it is, I'm there. Okay, after all I've done.
No, it's our place. It's up to us.
So let me see if I've got this straight. They make Zane the villain for the last few episodes of the season, and then in the finale, they try to fix all of this within the span of like 20 minutes. And then now I'm confused because I'm like, he already was fixed, and then you guys went and ruined him again. Why even try at this point? I just feel like we're way too far gone. But they then continue on their attempts to somewhat redeem Zane as he then goes to Will. They arrive at Mako right after Sophie and the other guy blast the cave, making it unstable. They then go on to usher them out, and Zane Zane also makes sure that Sophie doesn't see the girls in the pool. And then we end the series with the girls successfully moving the comet away from Earth. They then have their graduation ceremony and afterwards head back to the cafe. Zane tells her that it's good to have her back there and says that it just feels right somehow, and she tells him not to get his hopes up as she's just visiting. He tells her to come back anytime, but then she says that she has a feeling that she'll be spending her entire summer, and then he finishes her sentence by saying at Mako. He then tells her that if she ever needs any company out there, but then she tells him that she'll be sure to ask anyone but him, and then she walks off. He then calls after her asking if that was a joke, and she smiles back at him.
Don't get your hopes up, I'm just visiting.
We'll come back anytime. Anytime at all.
I have a feeling I'll be spending my entire summer.
Let me guess. Mako. You know, if you ever need any company out there...
I'll be sure to ask anyone except you.
That was a joke, right?
And so yeah, quite the sour note to end on. I honestly don't think that we could have been given a worse scene to wrap up this couple with. I honestly don't even know how to wrap things up in a positive light other than the fact that we're finally done. Like, we're finally free of the torture that is season 3 of Zane and Rikki. And I really don't want season 3 to be the note that we end on, and so I just ask you all to think back to the beautiful storyline that was season 1. They were a beautiful enemies to lovers story. They had so much going for them, and it's unfortunate that we have to end things like this. And so instead of doing that, let's think back and remember the good times instead. Remember when she kissed him and then they were surrounded by a ring of fire? Remember when they were trapped out on that balcony together? And then when they shared their first kiss in the elevator? That's the Zane and Rikki that I know and love, and that's the Zane and Rikki that I will choose to remember. And so on that note, I want to know what you guys think about this ship, so please leave all of your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below. I can't wait to read all about it. Also, please let me know what ship you'd like to see me cover next. I have a Google form sheet linked in the description that you can officially submit your ship requests to, but you can also always leave your requests in the comments down below. Also, thank you once again to Scentbird for sponsoring this video. If you haven't already, you can scan that QR code or use code Caitlin for 55% off your first month at Scentbird. But with all that being said, that's all from me. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you very, very soon. Oh my god, my throat like actually hurts. This has never happened to me, but I think that I've just been so angry about season 3 for so long, and I've been yelling, and I need to go relax and drink some tea. And so please give me an easy ship to talk about next. I need someone really positive and healthy, just so that I can cleanse my palate. All right, I am gonna go drink some tea. Bye guys.